Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Brooke pointed at the shipwreckage engulfed in flames and laughed cheerfully. Ahem, this might be a special operation taken by Vice Admiral Kizaru to prevent them from escaping. Coulson said with a slightly awkward smile. Brooke didn't know Kizaru, but Crocus did. He asked in shock. That Admiral candidate, Vice Admiral Kizaru, is personally stationed here. Yes. At this point, Crocus's heart was filled with relief and lingering fear. If this G0 branch base had arrived just half a day earlier, meaning it arrived last night, then he, Shaki, Jabba, and the others would have been finished. It seems this Twin Gates really doesn't need me anymore. The Marines will naturally take over the lighthouse here. Those rookie pirates are going to be in big trouble from now on. Chapter 156, Hinamoto and the Shogunate come into view. Inside the Room of Authority in Pangaea Castle, Mary Joyce. Saint Shepherd Jupiter, who controls Cypher Paul, activated the transponder snail beside him and switched it to slideshow mode. Take a look. This is the map Crocodile brought back. It's said not to be a world map, but a map of the country where the Stargate base is located. We only sent him to the New World initially to recruit him, but I didn't expect him to bring back so many valuable things besides that. I'm starting to appreciate him a bit, said Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn, the supreme leader of the 3 forces, holding Shodai Kaitetsu with a satisfied smile on his face. Once his mission in the New World is complete, summon him back as soon as possible for training. His martial arts and hockey must be improved quickly, otherwise, if we delay for a few more years, he'll be wasted. All right. Saint Shepherd Jupiter nodded. While they were speaking, Saint Topman Warcurry and the other 2 were examining the large map on the projection screen, as well as the various place names marked on it. Since they were all written in Wa language, there was no difficulty in understanding them. This is actually an island in the sea, but there's no scale marked on it, so we don't know its size. Saint Marcus Mars, responsible for the fields of science, history, and propaganda, stroked his long, straight beard and said softly. And look at the upper left corner, there's clearly a protruding zone that looks like a peninsula. This indicates that there might be other islands overseas, or even continents. Saint Shepherd Jupiter nodded and said. Through the interrogation of the Yashiro station manager brought by Crocodile, we have learned that this country is called Hinamoto. Overseas, there are also the so-called European continent and Asia continent. Those Cabane were transmitted from the European continent. If that's the case, it means these continents have also been ravaged by the Cabane. We don't need to worry about them for now. Let's first gain control over this Hinamoto before us. Saint Topman Warcurry said sternly. Indeed. Saint Shepherd Jupiter said. As he spoke, he controlled the transponder snail to quickly switch to the next map, which was a detailed map of the area around the Stargate base, specially enlarged and photographed. From this map, it seems our Stargate base is located in a place called Ojika Peninsula. There are 3 cities nearby that they call stations, Sentai Station, Kurokawa Station, and Hyajiro Station, which was previously discovered by Cypher Paul 9 agent and confirmed to be fallen. Currently, the army led by Bullet is clearing out the Cabane inside. The so-called stations were built because the wilderness is occupied by large numbers of Cabane, and the people of this country lack the ability to effectively resist them. Therefore, they built high city walls to enclose themselves. They then use iron-armored trains, which they call station cities, to transport supplies and manpower. This is why we didn't encounter any living persons or towns at first. They are all concentrated in cities located far apart from each other. And these station cities and station trains are all governed by a government organization called the Shogunate, with the highest leader being the Shogun. Hearing this, Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn raised a question. Didn't Cypher Paul 9 agent previously discover a group of armed forces clearing and capturing Cabane in the wilderness? How can you say they lack the ability to resist? Saint Shepherd Jupiter continued to explain what he had learned. According to the intelligence revealed by the chief steward, That group is the only force within Hinamoto that dares to engage the Kabane in close quarters, frontal combat in the wilderness. They are called the Hunter Guard, and also known as the Liberators. Their leader is Mima Amatori, the son of the shogun, Kyu Amatori. He is 22 years old this year. It is said that 10 years ago, when he was 12, he was able to command a whole army of 400,000 to carry out large-scale purges of Kabane on Kyushu Island, the southernmost part of Hinamoto. Initially, their operation was extremely smooth, and they reclaimed a large amount of land. However, they were later ambushed by his father, their logistics were cut off, and their whole army was annihilated. Subsequently, Mima Amatori severed his father-son relationship with him, and this also caused Hinamoto's policy towards the Kabane to completely shift towards the conservative faction. Upon hearing this, the few people present understood. It was another drama of infighting between the radical faction and the conservative faction. It's just that this Kyu Amatori was ruthless enough to sacrifice his own son. However, his only mistake was not completely killing Mima Amatori. Now, he has grown strong and gained his own influence. This kid seems to be a commander-type talent. Leading a whole army of 400,000 at the age of 12. Even with the status of the son of the shogun supporting him, it's an almost impossible matter. He can be considered both courageous and resourceful. He just trusted his father too much, but that's normal. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn felt a slight appreciation for this Mima Amatori, whom he had not yet met. He liked talent in the field of war. Overall, they actually have the ability to eliminate the Kabane, although the firearms called steam guns require multiple hits to penetrate the latter's heart. But according to what we've learned, as long as the distance between the two sides is close enough, 2 shots are actually sufficient, and the impact of the bullet can effectively repel the Kabane. It's a pity. Saint Shepherd Jupiter sighed with emotion. Most people lack the courage to fight the Kabane at close range? Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn said. Exactly. Saint Shepherd Jupiter said. Also, Lucci and Mata have already boarded the Hunter Guard Station City train. Judging from the direction, they should be heading towards Shiori Station, but no news has been sent back since then. There's no rush about that. 1 fallen Hyajiro Station and 1 intact Yashiro Station are enough for us to digest for a few days. Let them handle it themselves, there's no need to rush them. Saint Topman Warkuri said in a deep voice. As his voice fell, the 5 elders fell into a moment of silence. After thinking for a while, Saint Marcus Mars spoke. Their steam devices look very interesting, but it's a shame we haven't obtained a finished product yet. Also, peeling off the Kabinari heart membrane requires a large amount of manpower. Although we haven't researched how to utilize them yet, let's store them first. Dr. Fritz and his team have conducted experiments, and the peeled heart membranes haven't shown signs of deterioration in a short period. As for how long they can last, we don't know yet and need to continue observing. Manpower, huh? Saint Topman Warkuri frowned and suggested. Can we have the Academy of Science design a set of mechanical equipment for automatically peeling off the Kabinari heart membrane, and make it a structure that can be easily disassembled and assembled? From the information known so far, the number of Kabane in this world is particularly exaggerated. I feel it will be difficult to efficiently collect materials relying solely on manpower. As the boss of the Government Affairs Department, he was well aware of how difficult it was to send so many people through the Stargate. It was too troublesome. That's a good idea. I'll have someone notify Dr. Vegapunk. Now he has one more research project on his hands. St. Marcus Mars said with emotion. Humphrey, he's not the only one in the Academy of Science. Can't others develop just one set of processing equipment? If they can't even do this much, what are we keeping them for? St. Jaga Ursha Saturn said forcefully. Anyway, the little author will write diligently, and all the great readers can read with peace of mind. Chapter 157, Dr. Fritz's Astonishing Conjecture. Amazing, simply amazing. I still underestimated this Kabinari virus. This is definitely not a naturally formed virus, it was artificially developed. Inside the Stargate World base in Stargate World number 0001. In the research room specifically constructed for the Biochemical Research Institute, Dr. Fritz excitedly observed the Kabane whose hands, feet, and neck were shackled with sea stone and who had been injected with a powerful sedative. The blue light blooming from its heart reflected on his face, appearing extremely eerie. They had already conducted experiments. This Kabane, referred to as the core, could indeed attract surrounding ordinary Kabane, which would then attach to its body surface. Once attached, the ordinary Kabane would lose their own will and completely become a part of the core's body. Subsequent Kabane, even if separated by the Kabane in between, would produce the same effect as being attached to the core's surface, that is, also lose consciousness. Then, it was a process of continuously growing stronger. Interestingly, when the Kabane attached on its body were destroyed, the core would actually feel pain and anger. It was as if the outer layer of cobain had truly become its skin and muscles. Furthermore, it could secrete black mucus to completely combine the surface cobain together, giving them a hardness comparable to rock formation. Using mental fluctuation filled with negative emotions to attract other cobain, then using stronger mental fluctuation to suppress the will of other cobain, completely controlling their bodies, manipulating them at will. While muttering to himself, Dr. Fritz's brain was rapidly turning. No, if it were just pure suppression, it shouldn't have such strong mental power. Could it be temporary absorption? Through this method, amplify the core's mental power, so it would have stronger mental power to attract more cobain. In other words, the greatest value of this core cobain is not eliminating the human body self-protection mechanism, nor those messy little functions, but rather its ability to absorb and strengthen the strength of the heart. It's just that the components of the heart absorbed are mixed with too many extreme negative emotions, making it easy for people to completely become fallen amidst fear and brutality. The reason he said temporary absorption was because once the cobain attached to the core were forcibly separated, their consciousness immediately recovered, turning back into living dead with independent consciousness and bloodthirst. This was enough to show that the core did not completely digest the absorbed consciousness, or rather, spirit. Dean, it's feeding time. Just then, two researchers walked over, carrying a white box together. Oh, is it its meal time? Quick, don't let it starve. This little thing's appetite is much larger than ordinary cobain. Dr. Fritz straightened up, quickly walked out of the prison cell specifically cleared out to hold it, and then stood behind the glass wall, continuing to observe the situation inside. All right. Receiving the reply, one researcher opened the box lid. Inside was freshly collected blood. Because the temperature was a bit too high, he specifically wore heat-resistant gloves to avoid burning his hands. This blood was not ordinary human blood, but high-temperature blood from within cobain. Therefore, this blood was still emitting bright gunfire flash. Didn't expect that, did you? This blue light core cobain actually feeds on the blood of its fellow cobain. The process of foraging is to find crowds of people, then use the cobain on its body to turn the former into new cobain, and then absorb them inside or outside its body, and then use the secreted black mucus to absorb the blood nutrients from within their bodies little by little. But it doesn't suck them dry in one go. Instead, it tries to choose the strong and healthy cobain with a lot of blood to absorb from. Those with less blood inside their bodies are controlled by the wriggling of every inch of muscle, pushing them to the body surface to become frontline warriors to devour human blood. For this experiment, they specifically found a large open space outside the base last night, sent all the ordinary cobain in front of it to be absorbed, and then conducted various tests. Although the number of cobain wasn't large, this black smoke could only be considered a mini-type, but it was fine for observation and experimentation. After the tests were completed, the newly appointed Army Lieutenant General, Crocodile, personally took action, using Sandstorm to separate and recover it again. After this troublesome busy period, the Biochemical Research Institute finally gained a basic understanding of the black smoke formed by this core. Alright, hurry up and go. These two researchers did not pay attention to the strong bloody smell that overflowed as the lid was opened, but quickly walked out of the room and then tightly closed the gate made of steel. The next moment, the blue light cobain, which had originally fallen into a coma, twitched its nose instinctively. Its eyes suddenly opened, revealing its deep blue pupils and pitch black irises inside. Looking at the steaming, fiery red blood in the white box, its expression became ferocious and crazed. But no matter how it struggled, the iron cuffs made of sea stone remained completely still. Multiple failed attempts later, it finally remembered its other ability. Swish swish swish. The next moment, from its arms, legs, and heart, streams of black mucus shot out, accurately hitting the box 4 or 5 meters away, then pulling it to a closer position by contracting, and then shooting out slime again, immersing it into the boiling blood. Just then, the pitch black, elongated slime actually wriggled like a straw, sending the blood towards its own body. It's too beautiful. Every time I see this screen feed, I feel it's so beautiful. This is simply a work of art in the biochemical field. Dr. Fritz was incredibly happy at this moment. I should give it a name. Yes, a name. How can a work of art not have a name? Let me think what to call it. What do you think of Blue Heart? Although he didn't turn his head, just stared while pressed against the glass wall, the two researchers beside him also knew he was asking them. The two exchanged a helpless glance. It's very good, Dean. Okay, then from now on, it will be called Blue Heart. Dr. Fritz was very satisfied with this name and said softly. Next, I want to try and see if I can awaken its consciousness back. These words stunned the researchers. They only heard the director of the Biochemical Research Institute continue speaking while thinking. Since we already know its consciousness is filled with extreme negative emotions such as fear, brutality, and bloodthirst, then the solution is to target these. However, this is already beyond the scope of biochemistry. I need to submit a report to the higher-ups to see if they can come up with a method. Also, I need a test subject with a firm will, preferably one who has mastered the strength of hockey, but whose combat power is not too high, to see if, after injecting Blue Heart's blood into their body, they can use hockey to resist the invasion of negative emotions and successfully control the strength of the virus within their body. Chapter 158, Lucci's Key Target. Clatter clatter, clatter clatter, wake up. At the rear end of the black iron armored train, a slightly tired Lucci gently nudged Mata, who was leaning against the carriage wall, sleeping. She slowly opened her eyes, going from groggy sleepiness to fully awake in less than 2 seconds. Is it morning already? For the past 3 days, due to their height issues, the two of them ultimately couldn't change clothes and blend into the hunter guard. Having no other choice, they had to play hide-and-seek with these people. When soldiers came to patrol this rear end, they would jump onto the top of the carriage to hide. If they needed food and water, Lucci would sneak inside the train. Relying on the speed of instant transmission, the fine control over his body provided by paper arts, and his professional ability as an agent, he was able to remain silently in people's blind spots at all times. If there were many people, he would dig his fingers into the iron plating above the carriage, sticking to the ceiling like a gecko, and then find an opportunity to get water and rice balls. Honestly, the difference in strength meant Lucci hadn't been discovered yet. As for the call of nature, these hunter guard weren't always on the train. Every evening, they would stop the train along the way. Based on the two's secret observation, they needed to replenish the steam boiler at the front of the train with fresh water, check the train's situation, hunt and store meat, and let people get some air around. This time was enough for the two of them to take care of their needs. The only thing that was particularly annoying was that whenever the train passed through areas with mountain slopes on both sides, many Cabane would frantically jump over. This forced them to take action and deal with them, ensuring the small space at the rear end remained clean. Fortunately, the two quickly adapted. After discussing, they decided that one would sleep while the other kept watch. Relying on their trust in each other's strength and their will, which had long been accustomed to dangerous environments, the one who was sleeping didn't need to worry at all, and their sleep quality wasn't much of an issue. At this moment, it was morning. I really didn't expect that our height would bring us such great difficulty. Why are the people in this world so short? Mata complained while standing up and tidying her clothing. Lucci didn't respond to her words because he had already complained about it in his heart. This Mima Amatori has a problem. Last night, I went from the roof to the front of the train and found a large amount of Cabane Nora below. Among them, there was one whose mental fluctuation was very special and strong, filled with unpleasant negative emotions. Combined with their previous situation of capturing Cabane alive, he must be planning to use these Cabane for something. Alarm whistle. Just as he was about to continue speaking, the sound of the alarm whistle came from the front of the train, indicating that the train was about to stop. What's the situation? Mata looked over in confusion, because this black train had never stopped this early in the past few days. Lucci looked at the clear blue river appearing before them and the city gradually becoming clear ahead, reminding her. We've arrived at the station. Great, finally a chance. Mata laughed with excitement. Let's get off the train first, then walk into that city. Otherwise, we'll definitely be discovered by the soldiers inside the city. After speaking, Lucci jumped down without hesitation, completely disregarding the fact that the train was still moving at high speed. Seeing this, Mata didn't hesitate either, decisively turning into an afterimage and following closely. The black train continued along the railway towards the city gate of the station. When it approached a certain distance, the huge city gate was seen slowly lowering, and the railway on it connected perfectly with the railway at the broken bridge. Beneath the great bridge, a clear river meandered through, shimmering under the reflection of the morning sunlight, welcoming this noisy arrival. Its arrival woke up the people inside the city who were still in their dreams. It's the Hunter Guard. Liberator. Long live. We can be with the Hunter Guard again. The sense of security is overwhelming. Whether it was the gun-wielding soldiers guarding the city gate or the residents who surged out after receiving the news, everyone's face was filled with bright smiles of excitement and adoration, cheering towards the black train slowly entering the city gate. What's the situation? Who are those people? But clearly, there were also some people in the crowd who didn't recognize the Hunter Guard. They asked those around them with faces full of confusion. The Hunter Guard. An independent troops formed to eliminate the Cabane. Winning battle after battle against the Cabane, wherever they go, the Cabane are swept away, and the land returns to the hands of human once again. Just then, from the black train that had came to a stop, a group of gun-wielding soldiers wearing black uniforms and possessing a powerful aura walked down. The expression on each of their faces was so indifferent, showing no concern for the enthusiastic welcome from the citizens on both sides. But the people didn't mind their attitude either. Instead, they felt that experts should be like this. And when a handsome man with pink long hair, holding a red-sheathed long saber in his right hand, walked over with the golden short-haired beauty behind him, surrounded by a group of capable cadres, the atmosphere instantly reached its peak. It's Lord Biba. What a heroic figure. Truly worthy of being the General Sama's son. Lucci and Mata, who were already hidden in a corner, had somehow put on loose kimonos, making themselves less out of place in this city. At the same time, the two carefully observed every detail around them. What do we do next? First, contact the base and listen to the intelligence gathered by the other teams. Then, report the matter of the hunter guard to the base, especially the aura I sensed at the front of the train. As soon as Lucci finished speaking, his gaze suddenly focused on a small red-haired girl in a red dress who had run up to Mima Amatori. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Another person emitting a Kabane aura." Back on the train, he and Mata had already noticed that Mima Amatori and that blonde woman were emitting a unique aura. After comparing, the two found that this aura was very similar to the Kabane aura. Furthermore, judging from their combat performance the first time they saw them clear out Kabane, Mima Amatori and that blonde short-haired woman with her hair tied up, whether it was their strength, speed, or reaction, were clearly supernatural, meaning they exceeded the level of other human in this world. She seems to call Mima Amatori brother. Mata said after listening closely. No, there's another one. But Lucci didn't care about that. His sharp gaze, like an arrow, accurately fixed on a boy standing behind the crowd on the opposite side. That was a boy with gray-green hair, wearing glasses with a light green lens only over his right eye, and dressed in an emerald green top. At this moment, he was looking seriously at Mima Amatori, who was talking to the red-dressed girl in the court. What exactly is going on with them, or are there actually quite a few people like this? At the same time, a beautiful young woman wearing a pink Japanese-style formal dress, with a black ponytail, and quite attractive, walked up to Mima Amatori and the red-haired girl, accompanied by a black-haired samurai also with a ponytail, wearing blue-black attire and carrying a blade at his waist. You must be Lord Mima Amatori? I am, the commander of the Yamagawa family. Yamagawa. That's the Rojus. Lucci narrowed his eyes, watching this newly appeared young woman. Her claim of being the commander of the Yamagawa family piqued his interest. A young woman serving as a family commander? Seeing this group follow Mima Amatori towards the black train again, Lucci concluded that this group, which gathered 4 people emitting Kabane aura, was a key target. Chapter 159, The Hunter Guard's Immense Value. The black train that Lucci and Tomo had been following for several days, like other trains, actually had a name, the Katetsugio. It was the only iron fortress in the entire nation painted black. Inside the train. I am truly humbled that the General Sama's son himself is leading the way for us. Who was following behind Mima Amatori, said sheepishly. Beside her were the gold short-haired woman, the blue-clothed samurai, and the gray-green-haired youth that Lucci had noticed. The red-clothed little girl, however, was nowhere to be seen. We severed ties long ago, we are no longer father and son. Mima Amatori explained his situation with his father frankly as he led the way. How could that be? Oh, right, there's a strange matter we wanted to discuss with you. Mima Amatori seemed quite interested in the word strange. He stopped in his tracks, turned around, and asked softly. Please tell me about it. After exchanging glances with the gray-green-haired youth, Ayam spoke in a gentle tone. It's like this. When we passed by Yashiro Station, we heard something there that was almost like a mythical legend. They said that a few days ago, black smoke attacked their station. Just as everyone was falling into despair, a god of sand who could manifest as yellow sand and control sandstorms appeared, defeated it, and even swept away all the Kabane with it. Before leaving, he took Governor Tianzhong with him. The gray-green-haired youth continued. We checked, and there were indeed clear traces of battle in that place. Especially the mountain slopes on both sides of the track had their tops sliced off, as if cut instantly by a sharp blade. This is consistent with the accounts of many soldiers at Yashiro Station. Yes, just as Ikuma said, although it sounds quite fantastical, there is a sense of reality everywhere there. There are simply too many residents who claim to have seen that god of sand. Ayam nodded and said. Even a roasted chicken stall that the god of sand visited was packed at the time. The spot where that god of sand sat was even covered with a large umbrella to shield it from wind and rain, treating it completely as a place where a deity had lingered. Something like that happened. Mima Amatori lowered his head and fell into thought. Speaking of strange things, he actually had one on his end too. One of his cadres named Ryu had reported that recently, several rice balls and bamboo tubes used for water had gone missing. It wouldn't be strange for something like this to happen on a regular iron fortress, as people always tried to sneak extra. But their hunter guard was under militarized management, and the quantity of rice balls and bamboo tubes was strictly monitored. Because of this matter, several soldiers had been interrogated along the way, but nothing was ultimately found out. Most importantly, he had great confidence in his sixth sense. These past few days, he constantly felt as if he was being watched. On the other side, Lucci and Mata temporarily separated. The former hid in the shadows, communicating with the Stargate base via transponder snail, while the latter went to observe the city's environment to see if there was anything noteworthy. Someone emitting a Cabane aura? Senior Director Addison on the other end of the transponder snail heard Lucci's report and immediately recalled a plan that the Biochemical Research Institute had reported not long ago. Wait a moment, I'll have Dr. Fritz come over right away. I believe he'll be very interested in what you've said. With that, he didn't hang up the transponder snail but directly used another transponder snail on his desk to call Dr. Fritz, then quickly and clearly explained the situation. Bang, as expected, in less than 5 minutes, Professor Freeze, who wasn't far from the location, pushed open the office door and rushed in. He then snatched the handset from the former's hand and shouted excitedly. You really saw living people emitting a Cabane aura? Are they the kind with clear consciousness? Yes, and not just one, there are 4. 2 men and 2 women, and they. Lucci described the physique that Mima Amatori and the gold short-haired woman had displayed again. Ha 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 ha. Upon hearing this, Professor Freeze burst into ecstatic laughter, shouting. I knew it. I knew my idea wasn't wrong. I just didn't expect that the people of this world have already mastered the technology for mass-producing Cabane warriors. Although there's a slight regret, this also saves us a lot of time and energy. Let me tell you, although I don't know you, you must keep a close eye on those 4 people. At least ensure you can bring one back. Lucci, who was far away at Shiori Station, observed his surroundings vigilantly while speaking softly into the transponder snail. Understood. Oh, right. Since 4 Cabane warriors appeared there at once, it means there must be someone who has mastered the relevant technology. Look carefully to see if there's anyone who looks like a scholar or researcher. There is indeed one. Lucci recalled some of the personnel in the Hunter Guard who had unique attire and temperament. An image quickly surfaced in his mind, a middle-aged man with the same gray-green hair color, but styled neatly swept back like a pompadour. He wore a clean white robe and had a small device around his neck that was a gas mask combined with night vision goggles, giving off a punk-like vibe. When the Kotetsugio had stopped along the way, he had seen this person following Mima Amatori several times. His temperament was very similar to the scientists he had met. Ha ha ha, that must be him. Keep an eye on him. His value is even greater than those Cabane warriors. Of course, since there are 2 of you, try to bring them all back. Dr. Fritz cheered excitedly. At this moment, Senior Director Addison interjected. Lucci, since you have high-value targets there, I will order other Cypher Pol 9 agent teams to converge in your direction. We have already obtained the map of this nation. Based on the location you just provided and the intelligence about Mima Amatori, they are likely heading to Kongakaku, where the shogunate capital is located. Then your next stop is very clear, Hidden Stones Village Station, the last station before Kongakaku. I will have them head there in advance. Lucci nodded and said expressionlessly. Understood. Wait a minute. Just as both sides were about to hang up the call tacitly, Dr. Fritz stopped them, saying quickly. Did you mention to Counselor Addison earlier that you sensed a mental source filled with negative emotions? Yes. It was a mental fluctuation that caused intense fear and killing intent to surface in my heart just by using observation hockey to sense it. Lucci said in a deep voice. He was also very concerned about this matter. Then there's no mistake. There must be a core of black smoke inside the train. Mima Amatori must have captured hundreds of Cabane alive and locked them up to feed it. What are black smoke and core? Lucci asked, confused, but quickly understood their concepts under Dr. Fritz's explanation. It seems the Hunter Guard has too many things of great value. It's simply a treasure trove. Your decision to follow them was absolutely correct. Senior Director Addison said with a smile. I will immediately report these matters to the home world and see how the lords there want to handle them, especially this Mima Amatori, and the young commander you mentioned. Like you, I also sensed political value in her. But your first mission and second mission are to keep a close eye on Mima Amatori and that Cabane researcher. After you rendezvous with the other teams at Hidden Stones Village Station, await further orders. Chapter 160, Conspiracy and Blades. What are you trying to do? No, don't, please, no, Outside the city wall on the edge of the farmland area of Shiori Station, 3 men dressed as farmers leaned against a horse harness to a wooden plow, trembling as they looked at the samurai wielding blades who had coerced them here. But the latter had no intention of communication. Amidst their desperate screams, they swung their blades and killed them, cutting down the horse as well. Besides them, 2 other groups were doing the same thing not far away. They then left the corpses, which were bleeding profusely like broken bags, on the ground and quickly ran back inside the wall. All of this was seen by Mata, who was hidden in a corner of the city wall. She frowned, her gaze shifting back and forth between the corpses and the numerous kabane outside the defensive pit. Something bad is going to happen. The next moment, Mata turned and jumped down towards inside the city, then transformed into an afterimage and ran with great speed towards the meeting point agreed upon with Lucci. Upon arriving, she quickly told him what she had seen and thought. Humphrey, it seems that there's no shortage of despicable people in any world, although I'm not a good person myself. Lucci glanced coldly in the direction of the governor's mansion. He had already heard about Mima Amatori's background from senior manager Addison, so he could easily guess that the conservative faction was targeting the Hunter Guard. In this Shiori station, the biggest representative of the conservative faction was likely the chief steward here. So what should we do? Mata asked. Lucci said expressionlessly. The base just gave us specific instructions. Keep an eye on Mima Amatori and that researcher in the white robe. If you have spare ability, also pay attention to the other Kobane warriors and that Yatsugawa, as well as the black smoke core inside the train engine. That's too much, just the 2 of us. Mata looked at him with distress. The most important targets are the first 2. Do your best with the others. Besides, as long as we hold out until the next station, we'll have enough manpower. Especially that researcher, who clearly has no self-preservation ability. Just make sure they don't get killed by someone or a Kobane. Woo 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 woo. Just as Lucci finished speaking, a sharp alarm whistle sounded inside the city. This caused panic and tension among the numerous citizens, because it meant the Kobane were attacking the city. Let's go. Lucci stopped dawdling and quickly headed towards the black train where Mima Amatori was located with Mata. But when the 2 arrived at the city gate, they found that the train had already driven out of the city. Clearly, the Hunter Guard was going out of the city again to meet the Kobane in combat. TCH, troublesome. Having no choice, the 2 could only choose an unoccupied section of the city wall to climb over, then slowly approach the black train while remaining hidden. At the same time, a large number of Kobane had already passed through the defensive pit and were desperately climbing the city wall, enduring the bullets constantly being fired from the city wall. They were like an army of black ants, with tiny gunfire flashes appearing among them. Ah, how can there be so many? A gun-wielding soldier looked at the dense mass of Kobane below, cold sweat beading on his forehead. They still didn't know why these Kobane had suddenly surged forward. Can we really defend against this kind of situation? In a tall building somewhere inside the city, a group of people gathered, watching the tense situation outside. Deliberately luring the Kobane and exposing the citizens to danger, this kind of scheme is truly. One of them looked hesitantly at the 5 continents security officer from the Shogun's family standing before him. Please rest assured, the Kobane will be dealt with by the Hunter Guard. Since they are called liberators, they will surely step forward, and then we can take the opportunity. Clatter clatter, clatter clatter, screech screech, the black train that had left the city quickly decelerated and came to a steady stop as Mima Amatori drew her blade. Immediately after, the armor on one side lifted upwards, revealing the mortar squad that had been ready inside. Incendiary shells, fire. Following Mima Amatori's command, the Hunter Guard soldiers loaded the cannonballs into the mortars, then quickly dodged to the side, covering their ears at the same time. The next moment, the sounds of bombardment rose one after another. Cannonballs flew into the crowd of Kobane with a shriek, exploding into bursts of flame and shock waves. These flames could even continue burning on the dry ground, constantly scorching the nearby Kobane, truly living up to the name incendiary shell. Immediately after, the scene that Lucci and Mata had seen before reappeared. Motorcycles, seemingly powered by high-pressure steam, carried riders armed with guns, charging out of the train carriages aggressively and continuously shooting at the Kobane. The infantry who followed behind, through mutual cooperation, shot and killed the charging Kobane at close range. Such an astonishing scene was an eye-opener for the soldiers and samurai of Shiori Station on the city wall. It was truly the first time they had seen troops dare to go out and meet the enemy in combat. Lucci, look there. On the other side, Mata and Lucci, who had arrived near the train and were hidden, were also observing the situation on the battlefield, but their gaze never left Mima Amatori. However, the red-clothed little girl and the gold short-haired woman, because they emitted the aura of Kobane and were suspected to be Kobane warriors, also received considerable attention from the 2. What Mata pointed to was the scene of the 2 of them advancing side by side, facing a giant Kobane nearly 3 meters tall, holding a great cleaver. The latter also had 2 Cabane attached to its chest and back, clearly transitioning towards becoming a core. TCH, aren't there people over 2.5 meters tall in this world too? Lucci said unhappily with a cold expression. The gold short-haired woman's height was clearly 1.70 meters, but she only reached the giant Cabane's thigh when standing in front of it. It was definitely 3 meters tall by estimation. But whether it's the Hunter Guard or in this Shiori station, we haven't seen anyone over 2 meters tall. This should be an extremely special case. Mata comforted him from the side. Next, the two witnessed the girl and the woman's spectacular cooperation. First, the gold short-haired woman accelerated, then threw the medium shotgun in her hand into the air above the giant Cabane's head. She then dodged the latter's cutlass swing. Even though the blade split the ground beside her, causing a loud noise and black smoke, she showed no fear. With her back to the incredibly thick thighs, she then slightly bent her legs, stacking her hands in front of her. The red-haired little girl followed closely behind, performing a leap and a flip. Along the way, the 2 guns in her hands pierced the head of the Cabane on the giant Cabane's back, then she landed precisely on the gold short-haired woman's hands. With a forceful lift from the latter, she leaped up again using that strength, just in time to catch the medium shotgun that the gold short-haired woman had thrown into high altitude and falling. In the air, she shot through the giant Cabane's crown at a vertical angle. This wasn't over yet. The gold short-haired woman suddenly drew the long saber from her back and, taking advantage of the moment the giant Cabane screamed from the head injury, pierced its heart and the heart of the Cabane on its chest. The entire sequence of movements flowed smoothly, fully displaying their Superman-like speed, strength, agility, reaction, and combat experience. However, while these actions amazed the soldiers and samurai on the Shiori station side, they were nothing special to Lucci and Mata. In fact, they found them overly flashy. That blade. However, Lucci's sharp gaze noticed the peculiar blade in the gold short-haired woman's hand. The blade was covered in glowing veins resembling Cabane blood vessels and was pitch black. Especially its strength, which could pierce the heart and chest of 2 Cabane with a single strike, made his eyes light up. They had tested before that ordinary samurai blades in this world were completely useless against the Cabane's steel heart membrane. In a head-on clash, the former would only break. Chapter 161, Another Cabane virus experiment. What are you doing? Where is this? Let me out. I want to go back to starvation hell. I'll go back. This was a prison cell made entirely of steel. 3 muscular men, all around 1.8 meters tall and stripped to the waist, were locked onto iron chairs with sea-stone handcuffs and leg cuffs. They also wore explosive collars around their necks. In such a situation, how could one not panic? The man sitting on the far left already regretted agreeing to come out for a full meal. This made him incredibly terrified, pleading and struggling desperately, appearing very noisy compared to the 2 silent individuals beside him. Outside the prison cell, Dr. Fritz stood beside Senior Director Addison, listening to the latter's introduction. Behind him stood 2 researcher and 2 men in black. Mike Fosson, original bounty of 51 million Bailey, a prisoner from Impel Down's underground level 3, starvation hell. He is skilled in wrestling fighting and initially awakened armament hockey during a combat with enemy pirates. Not long after, while his injuries hadn't healed, he encountered a warship from the G4 branch and was captured. Senior Director Addison then looked at the prisoner sitting in the middle and said, Hawthorne, original bounty of 33 million Bailey, a prisoner from Impel Down's underground level 2, beast hell. He is an animal system, common species, mouse fruit, kangaroo form ability user. After speaking, his tone paused. He looked deeply at the test subject on the far right, the only one not wearing a prison uniform, but just a pair of white casual pants. After a moment, he began the introduction. Steve Gus, a Cypher Pol 7 agent member, responsible for the base's security work. He is skilled in iron body from the 6 powers and has initially mastered life return. He has strong control over his own muscles, blood vessel, and blood, enough to tie off and stop bleeding from wound in a short amount of time. He was also the first personnel to test the Cabane's aggressiveness. Dr. Fritz was momentarily stunned and asked doubtfully, why would he do this? If he wanted to gain the enhanced strength from the Cabane virus, he could completely wait until the research is mature. Gus's younger brother joined the De Niro family, one of the 5 great mafia families of the West Blue, 2 years ago. Yesterday, while escorting a batch of weapons and ammo, he passed through Reverse Mountain and was arrested by the Marines from the G0 branch. He is currently being escorted to an ICE lobby to await trial. After receiving the news, in order to save his younger brother, he voluntarily became a test subject for the Biochemical Research Institute. He stated that if successful, he is willing to continue serving the world government. If he fails, he will have no regrets, only asking that his brother be granted a free and peaceful life. Senior Director Addison expressionlessly explained the simple cause and effect of the matter. After listening, Dr. Fritz was silent for a moment before speaking again. I understand. I will arrange for him to be the last to be injected with the Kabinari virus. We'll see the situation with the first 2 test subjects first. Then I'll leave it to you. Dr. Fritz nodded and then signaled the researcher waiting for instructions to begin the experiment. The latter carried a small box into the prison cell, and the 2 men in black followed. No, don't come over. What are you doing? What are you doing? Get away. Mike Fossum's expression immediately became even more panicked upon seeing the 3 expressionless figures enter, the white coats and 2 men in black. But no matter how he struggled, the restraints held him firmly to the chair. The researcher in white coats ignored his curses and pleas. Skillfully, he took out an injector glowing with blue light from the box and then injected it into his chest amidst his shrill screams. At the same time, the faces of the 2 beside him, who were about to face the same fate, instantly turned pale upon seeing this scene. When the injector was pulled out of Mike Fossum's body, the skin on his chest began to rapidly turn black and purple. The affected blood vessel gradually showed a hint of blue light, spreading out like a glowing spider web. Soon, his heart was invaded by the virus, and the skin on his chest could not block the blue light from showing through. What is this thing? He watched in horror as a streak of blue light climbed up along his left carotid artery. The virus's speed of erosion could only be described as neither fast nor slow, at least giving people enough time to fully observe the process. Ugh! When the blue light invaded Mike Fossum's brain, a small patch of blue light also lit up in his brain. At the same time, blue light appeared in his pupil, and his irises turned black, looking extremely terrifying. Huh? What Dr. Fritz found interesting was that the blue light in his pupil was not stable. It flickered on and off continuously. The man's expression also changed repeatedly, sometimes ferocious, sometimes crying out in pain. As expected, my guess was correct. When a person's willpower strength is sufficient to awaken hockey, they have a certain degree of resistance to the Kabinari virus's invasion of the brain. I just don't know if this guy can hold on. The dean of this biochemical research institute was currently very much looking forward to a good outcome. Unfortunately, things did not seem to be progressing that smoothly. Mike Fossum only lasted for a little over 5 minutes. The blue light in his pupil completely stabilized, and he was now a true Cabane. The sudden surge of strength caused the iron chair beneath him to creak and groan, and even gradually show fine cracks. Fortunately, the sea-stone chains restraining his hands and feet were sturdy enough. His hockey presence has become much stronger. At this moment, a man in black inside the prison cell spoke in a deep voice, stating the situation he perceived. Ha ha ha, I knew it. This thing has the effect of amplifying mental power. Dr. Fritz burst into laughter, then waved his palm and urged. All right, deal with him. Prepare for the next test. Yes. The man in black who had spoken walked up to Mike Fossum and extended his right hand's index finger. Using the hardening technique of armament hockey, he coated the surface with a layer of black light. Immediately after, he turned into an afterimage and stabbed at the latter's already steel-hardened and glowing heart membrane. Clang! Unfortunately, one strike failed to penetrate its defense. The former was not surprised by this. With a cold face, he continued to rapidly use finger pistol, launching consecutive attacks at the same position. Splurge! Suddenly, a sound similar to tempered glass being pierced rang out. Immediately after, a spurt of scorching high-temperature blood sprayed from the wound, staining the man in black's suit and white shirt crimson and emitting wisps of warm steam. However, he paid no mind to this and turned around to face Addison and the others outside. Report: using finger pistol enhanced with armament hockey, it requires hitting one spot 5 consecutive times to pierce its heart. Record that. Yes. The researcher remaining behind Dr. Fritz immediately took out a pen and recorded it. At the same time, while Mike Fossum's corpse was still warm, the researcher inside the prison cell took out another injector from the box and then walked up to Hawthorne. Amitabha. Hawthorne, though still showing a hint of nervousness, quickly regained his composure as he closed his eyes and chanted these 4 words. However, those who research biochemistry have long since tempered their hearts to be utterly ruthless through years of dealing with gore. They were completely unaffected by this Buddhist phrase and injected the injector into his chest without hesitation, then pushed in the Kabinari virus. Chapter 162, The World Government's Cabane Warriors. Humphrey. The moment the Kabinari virus invaded his body, Hawthorne's body swelled under stimulation. He entered the animal system's human-beast form, transforming into a large physiqued kangaroo man at a speed visible to the naked eye. And indeed, as he transformed, the spread speed of the Kabinari virus on his chest significantly slowed down. The most obvious sign was that the affected skin was no longer so black and purple, but only somewhat red. The increase in muscle strength allows him to withstand higher temperatures, so he naturally won't be easily scorched or burned by the high-temperature blood vessel. But the key is whether he can preserve his consciousness. Dr. Fritz thought and explained as he watched Hawthorne's body change. Not long after, a ball of blue light also appeared on the kangaroo man's chest. However, perhaps due to the muscle strength issue, it couldn't burn through the epidermis, so it didn't form the transparent membrane of ordinary cabane. The brightness was naturally a bit dim. But when the light ray on the left carotid artery passed through his eyes and invaded his brain, the person froze there. The blue light in his pupil only lasted for 3 seconds before returning to black. It succeeded? Seeing this scene, Dr. Fritz, Counselor Addison, and others outside the prison cell showed joy. Do you still have consciousness? Say something. Inside the prison cell, the researcher cautiously walked up to Hawthorne and asked casually. But the latter just raised his head blankly, surveying the surrounding environment in confusion. Chirp 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 chirp, huh? Seeing the kangaroo man make strange sounds at him, the researcher looked at him, completely confused, and asked again. Can you tell me what your name is? Chirp 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 chirp. It was still the same, still stupidly making inexplicable noises. At this point, the smiles on the faces of everyone outside the prison cell froze. That's the sound of a kangaroo. My hometown has them, so I'm very familiar. Suddenly, Steve Gus, who was sitting nearby, spoke up. So that's how it is. Dr. Fritz stroked his chin, which he had just shaved that morning, and said in a deep voice. I didn't expect that legend was true. What legend? Senior Director Addison asked curiously. It is said that among devil fruit, the animal system is the most special type because it contains another consciousness and soul. Now it seems it's true. You mean, Hawthorne's personal consciousness was invaded by the Kabineri virus, causing the kangaroo consciousness within his body to awaken and replace the former as the dominant consciousness of the body? That's right, only this explanation makes sense. Dr. Fritz gave him a look of approval and said. I just don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. But judging from the current performance, the consciousness dominated by the kangaroo seems very docile, yet the glowing heart also proves that its body has also been strengthened by the virus. After speaking, he ordered the researcher inside the prison cell. Ron, you come out first. Have them undo Hawthorne's restraints. Yes, Dean. As group leader Ron quickly walked out of the prison cell, the two men in black exchanged glances. As instructed, they took out the key and unlocked the C-stone handcuffs and leg cuffs, but the explosive collar on his neck remained. Chirp chirp chirp. Seeing that they had released him, Hawthorne, who had transformed into a kangaroo man, actually showed a human-like smile and made a waving gesture signifying thanks towards them. Just as expected. Alright, find a place to keep it. Don't let it lack food and water. Check its body in a few days, then send it back to Impel Down. Dr. Fritz lost interest in Hawthorne. Yes. Soon, one of the men in black in the prison cell led the very obedient kangaroo man away. Everyone present focused their gaze on Gus, who appeared very calm. Having seen 2 examples in a row, he had relaxed and roughly had a clear understanding of this virus in his heart. Come on. Go ahead. Dr. Fritz nodded to group leader Ron, who again walked in carrying the box and came before Gus. The process was the same as before, he pushed the virus into Gus's chest without any hesitation. Humphrey. Gus let out a muffled groan because he felt a pain in his chest like being burned by flames. Fortunately, he could endure it by gritting his teeth. A pair of fierce eyes stared intently at the lines of light connecting to his heart, then quickly igniting it. It was very hot, very scalding, and extremely painful. No wonder the first prisoner before him let out such a miserable scream. This level of pain was indeed a bit beyond ordinary people's imagination. Large patches of cold sweat had seeped out on his head and back. Finally, the heart was completely changed, and the epidermis on his chest was also burned into a transparent, hardened membrane. That intense pain also disappeared like flowing water. He only felt warm all over, and at the same time, a sense of power spread throughout every muscle. Concentrate your spirit. What happens next will decide your life and death. Try to stop the blood in the left carotid artery from invading your brain. Dr. Fritz's reminder in a raised voice timely called Gus's attention back. Okay. Gus's gaze suddenly sharpened. Lowering his head, he stared closely at that blood vessel emitting blue light as it spread up. At the same time, he deeply immersed his consciousness within his body. He began to try to control the left carotid artery and the high-temperature blood inside, finding this process was not difficult at all. Although the artery blood vessel also became tough like the heart membrane, and although the blood heated up and glowed like boiling water, a blood vessel is still a blood vessel, and blood is still blood. It was still under the control of life return. It succeeded? To Dr. Fritz and others outside the prison cell, it seemed that as soon as his reminder was spoken, That glowing left carotid artery on Gus's body very obediently stopped at the collarbone, motionless. This caused his eyes and brain not to be affected in the slightest. But at the same time, a large amount of viscous black silk was secreted from his body, which then quickly condensed on his bare upper body into armor with a metallic sheen. This was a biological exoskeleton. I think it should be okay now. Help me loosen it. Gus raised his head and showed a joyful, brilliant smile. He survived. He was the only one among the 3 test subjects who survived. Ha 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 ha. Dr. Fritz was simply overjoyed upon hearing this. He hugged the nearby senior director Addison and shouted. Our Cobain warrior has succeeded. Yes, yes, I didn't expect it was really feasible. Now we have achieved a great merit, it's just. Senior Director Addison looked at Steve Gus, who had undone his handcuffs, leg cuffs, and explosive collar and was slowly standing up. He sighed. One must master life return to adapt to the Cobain virus. This condition is a bit high. No, that's not right. Dr. Fritz let go of him, the excited smile still lingering on his face. He said. The first test subject proved that as long as hockey is strong enough, one can also suppress the negative emotions in the Cobain virus. And Gus proved that as long as one intercepts the left carotid artery, one can also stop the virus from invading the brain. This can also be done physically, for example, using something like a bandage. At this time, Steve Gus, who was brought out by group leader Ron and another man in black, walked out bare-chested. The bright blue light on his chest and the spiderweb-like glowing blood vessels spreading out in all directions were so beautiful in Dr. Fritz's eyes. Doctor, there's actually still one problem, and that is the intense pain. Ordinary people cannot bear that kind of pain. Once one loses consciousness, even if one knows life return, it's useless. Gus said in a deep voice. Indeed. Dr. Fritz nodded in agreement. Although he hadn't experienced it, he could imagine how painful it was to have flames or magma flowing inside the body. Also, it made me awaken hockey. This feeling of being able to sense the aura and emotions of people around should be observation hockey, right? Chapter 163, Very Useful Doflamingo. The 5 elders were busy, Cypher Paul was busy, the army was busy, the Marines were busy, and even the Academy of Science was busy. Even Mihawk and Jayan were busy diligently studying swordsmanship. And within a room of authority, had actually been busy these days as well. Busy with what? Certainly not play tennis, watching song and dance, or eating delicious food, those were daily leisure activities. He was busy with important matters. What were the important matters? Looking at the various reports submitted by the 5 elders, some from the Cobain world side, and some from the Sea Star mainland side. Although trivial matters didn't reach him. But the world government's recent major actions were significant, and progress reports on these important matters were unavoidable. For example, the Political Affairs Department, Finance Department, Celestial Tribute Collection and Management Committee, as economists from various nations gathered and began to get on track, had already dispatched professional economic specialists, accompanied by administrative department officials, to the poor nations and small nations among the affiliated countries. The Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue, where Bartholomew Kuma was located, and the Dressrosa Kingdom in the New World, were considered among the key supported nations. It's worth mentioning that economists and economic specialists are different. Economists are experts who study economic theory and its applications, while economic specialists are more practical. Their research mainly focuses on enterprises, industries, and markets, providing reasonable suggestions for an organization's operation and production to improve its economic efficiency and benefits. Simply put, after economic specialists arrive in various nations, they must first understand the entire nation's situation, such as climate, population, resources, environment, and neighboring islands, and then devise a feasible development plan. Economists, on the other hand, remained in Mary Jo's, researching the formula for reforming the heavenly tribute collection ratio. This was a very complex subject. They had to ensure that the world government's annual income would not be significantly affected, while also making it acceptable and adaptable for the nearly 200 affiliated countries under their rule. There were also project reports from the Administration Department Construction Division, mainly covering 4 areas: the construction of the new World Government Headquarters, the construction of the new Army Headquarters, the construction of the Drum Kingdom Medical Academy and the World Hospital, and the laying of sea train tracks in Water 7. Although Mr. Tom had not yet solved the connection problem between the train and the floating track, the track's size and materials had been decided. So, the construction department decided to first build the track from Water 7 to Anai's lobby. Finally, there was the issue concerning the bridge on the Sea Tequila Wolf, or rather, its problems were due to the impact of the previous 4 major projects. The issue was that they required too much labor force. Although assisted by various engineering machinery, workers were the main force for construction. But where could the construction department find so many people in a short time? So, Director Maxwell of the construction department submitted an application requesting to transfer people from Tequila Wolf. But the problem was that the matter of the bridge on the sea was decided by former Imu not long after the world government was founded. The 5 elders, who knew this history, dared not act on their own and could only send a report to him. Hey, I was planning to find an opportunity to release them. Im looked at the report and smiled helplessly. In his opinion, arresting everyone from a nation and sentencing them to life imprisonment plus labor reform until death, just because they couldn't pay the heavenly tribute, was a bit excessive. However, the release he envisioned was only for the civilians. As for the royalty and nobility, they could be left alone. Afterwards, the world government could select a suitable candidate to be the new king. But if so many people are released, the Tequila Wolf project will have to stop, which is unacceptable. The Great Bridge in the East Blue must continue to be built, and the progress must be accelerated. This point was something even the current Im insisted on. For no other reason than the great prophecy of the mermaid princess from 800 years ago, which he remembered. She once said that a great tsunami would occur in the East Blue, sweeping across all kingdoms and islands, a great tsunami infinitely more terrifying than Water 7's Aqua Laguna. Because of this, former Imu decided to connect most of the islands in the East Blue with a great bridge to quickly transfer citizens when the great tsunami arrived. According to his memory, he didn't do this out of pity for these common people, but simply from the perspective of a ruler's interests. If everyone in the East Blue died, the world government's loss would be immeasurable. But regardless of his reasoning, the current Im felt this was a great benevolent project, and perhaps it really could save the lives of all the citizens in the East Blue in the future. However, to avoid causing panic in the East Blue nations, this great prophecy had always been the world government's highest confidential. At the same time, the forced construction using the entire laborers of the non-affiliated nation led the outside world to view it as a terrifying project used by the celestial dragons for their killing a chicken to scare the monkeys tactic. Although the future would certainly undergo irreversible massive changes because of him, who knew if this world-destroying great tsunami was artificially caused or naturally triggered? As for questioning the authenticity of this great prophecy, don't be ridiculous. Im himself had the ability to see a period of the future. What was there to doubt? Future sight was a real strength that existed in this world. Then, if most of the innocent civilians are released, where will the laborers for building the bridge come from, and for the other major projects of the construction department? In the quiet treehouse, Im fell into deep thought. Even the wine glass in his hand stopped swirling. He was using his advantage of being familiar with the plot to recall what resources on planet C could serve as laborers. For the track laying in Water 7, since the work is done at sea, the Fishman tribe and Merfolk tribe should be able to help a lot. Their efficiency should be higher than human workers, right? His eyes lit up. Now that the world government and Fishman Island had such a good relationship, hiring a batch of Fishman craftsmen to help lay the sea train track shouldn't be a problem, right? Now that Sabati Archipelago had become a safe zone for the Fishman tribe, if they wanted to travel freely to more places, they would definitely need connected sea train tracks. Im kept this idea in mind, preparing to order the 5 elders to act later. For the laborer shortage issue in other projects, perhaps we could consider mechanized animals. I remember the future kingdom had gorillas and other animals modified with machinery, and also robots. But after thinking about it, he felt it was a bit unreliable. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration struck him. What was it he thought of before? Life imprisonment, labor reform until death? Ah, right, labor reform prisoners. Hundreds of thousands of prisoners in Impel Down, locked up in the underground prison all day being tortured, and they're still provided with food and drink. It's purely a waste of resources. Im stood up and paced back and forth excitedly. The prisoners with bounties over 100 million can't be touched, but how many such talents are there? The main force is still the prisoners on the first 4 levels with bounties below 50 million. Coupled with the pet fruit ability user Tarklama's control ability, as long as this slave king is watched, there will be hundreds of thousands of absolutely obedient labor reform prisoners. In his opinion, the prisoners in Impel Down and the citizens of the bridge on the sea were completely different matters. For the latter, as a transmigrator, he was willing to grant some mercy. But for the former, he could use them however he wanted, even work them to death, without batting an eye. Since they dared to be pirates and dared to do things against the world government, they should have the resolve. Even if they weren't, he would assume they were. This way, the matter of liberating the bridge on the sea can also be used to gain popular support from the world's citizens, and the new kingdom formed by the liberated citizens can also be brought under the world government's control. Just then, Im suddenly remembered someone. Speaking of construction, I remember Doflamingo's side seems to have someone who is a professional match. He now truly felt that this kid Doflamingo was extremely useful. Not only could he provide him with racket strings and provide the world government with underworld intelligence, and manage the weapon factory in the North Blue, but he could also provide talent. Chapter 164, Important Instructions from the World Government. Alarm whistle. The alarm whistle of the departing train sounded in people's ears once again. The dark Katetsugyo slowly pulled out of the open city gate with a clanking sound. On both sides of the track, large numbers of citizens still cheered and sent off the Hunter Guard and Mima Amatori. Everyone had witnessed the combat yesterday, and those who hadn't seen it with their own eyes had heard about it from many people. When the Hunter Guard truly returned victorious after fighting the Kabane head-on in the wilderness, just as the rumors said, their already worshipful feelings became even more reverent. Oh my, are you Europeans? That's quite rare. Inside the last carriage of the White Iron Fortress, passengers all from Aragane Station looked curiously at the man and woman. Although they wore kimono made of coarse cloth, their face and hair color were distinctly different from Easterners. Yes, we are going to Kongakaku to visit relatives, so we decided to take this train together. Mainly because the Hunter Guard is escorting us, which makes us feel safe. As the beauty with flowing golden hair spoke, she displayed the most appropriate expression of admiration, which earned strong agreement from everyone else in the carriage. Exactly, exactly. I never thought Lord Biba would be willing to escort us for a while. He truly lives up to being the General Sama's son, his heart is kind. Right, right. I already feel like I've reached Kongakaku now, the sense of security is overwhelming. Just a simple sentence praising the Hunter Guard allowed Mata and Lucci, these two stowaways, to easily gain the approval of everyone in the carriage and blend in. In fact, they hadn't expected things to turn out this way. The Hunter Guard's Katetsugyo had actually connected to the engine of the Iron Fortress and was taking it along. But no matter what, this was indeed a great thing for the two of them. This way, all the key targets were on the same train. The most crucial point was that the Iron Fortress was not like the Katetsugyo, which was under complete militarized management. There were a large number of ordinary citizens here, which gave the two of them an opportunity to sneak on. They created identities for themselves as residents of Shiori Station, European remnants. After everyone had mostly boarded the train, they quietly avoided the soldiers' checks and entered the carriage. As for these ordinary citizens, anyone who appeared inside the carriage must have already been checked, so they had no suspicion towards the two. Once the train started moving, even if soldiers came to patrol later, they would only assume the two had been checked by someone else and wouldn't possibly stop the train midway to kick them off. This way, Lucci and Mata finally had a comfortable place to rest. Moreover, since their carriage was at the end, it was convenient for them to act in secret. It was just that the bunks were made of iron, which felt uncomfortably cold to sit on. Because there were too many people talking and too many ears listening, the two didn't discuss any important matters. They simply stayed on their bunks. Lucci lay there with his eyes closed, resting, while Mata chatted and laughed with the people around her. Everyone is from Aragane Station? I've long heard it's a very beautiful place. It's such a shame it was fallen. Is that beautiful girl in the pink long dress everyone's commander? Oh, her name is Yatsugawa Ayam. Hearing you all talk, she seems like a very nice person. Is Yatsugawa the only one left? I see, there's an uncle named Michiuki Makino in Kongakaku? Roju, isn't that a high official? Honestly, perhaps because she was skilled at gathering intelligence through communication, Mata did indeed glean some useful information during a few hours of conversation. For example, there were two boys and girls on the train who clearly had Kabane hearts but possessed normal sanity, calling themselves Kabanari. Regarding this, when these men, women, old and young mentioned them, their gaze carried more or less a hint of disgust, or rather, it leaned more towards fear. But who could blame them? Lord Yatsugawa Ayam allowed them to board the Iron Fortress. I see, those with a Kabane aura are called Kabanari. Lucci, still with his eyes closed, thought to himself. Half human, half Kabane existences, huh? They don't seem like much. In comparison, he was more interested in the two strange long sabers he had seen in the wilderness near Shiori Station earlier. Besides the short-haired blonde woman, Mima Amatori also had one in his hand. The blade had a pattern resembling Kabane blood vessels. When it was just drawn from the scabbard, its luster was somewhat dim and dark, but upon contact with blood, it would emit a flame-like red light and could easily pierce the Kabanari heart membrane. Using the Kabanari heart membrane to deal with the Kabanari heart membrane. This matter needs to be reported to the base. However, we'll meet up with the other teams at Hidden Stone's Villegto Station, and there will definitely be new orders coming down, so I'll talk about it then. Night. Lucci and Mata didn't act but slept soundly. They had already gathered the intelligence they needed from the Hunter Guard's Katetsugyo, and there was nothing on this Iron Fortress worth staying up late for. However, this also caused them to miss the conflicting storyline that occurred on the roof of the Katetsugio at the front of the train between the protagonists. Inside the Stargate base on Ojika Peninsula, Senior Director Addison was in his office, looking at the contents of a document that had just arrived from the homeland. This document contained the instructions from the higher-ups regarding important matters such as Mima Amatori, the Shogunate, and the Biochemical Research Institute's Kabane Warrior Project, representing the world government's important stance towards this world. Based on the comprehensive analysis of known intelligence, Mima Amatori intends to seek revenge on his father, Kiyu Amatori. He captured a large number of Kabane and is holding them in the Katetsugio carriages, most likely to destroy the shogunate capital, Kongakaku. He is also suspected of possessing a black smoke core. And the stance from above is, stop him. Senior Director Addison was not surprised by this order from above. From the perspective of the world government's interests, an intact capital is certainly worth much more than one that has fallen. As for whether the future shogun would still be Kiyu Amatori, that could be discussed later. This was not a problem. He had already notified the other Cypher Pol 9 agent teams to head to Hidden Stone's Village Tow Station to rendezvous with Lucci and the others. At that time, he would have Cypher Pol 9 agent take down the Hunter Guard and the Katetsugio there first. Furthermore, to collect combat data. Former Cypher Pol 7 agent member, now newly promoted Cypher Pol 9 agent member, and the first Kabane warrior from the Biochemical Research Institute, Steve Gus, had also gone there with group leader Ron and 6 Cypher Pol 8 agent members. They wanted to see the difference between their side's Kabane warrior and the Kabane warrior native to this world. Originally, Dr. Fritz was prepared to go personally, but due to heavy resistance, he was unable to get his wish. This way, the time for a complete confrontation with this nation's shogunate is only a few days away. Crocodile should also be arriving at Yashiro Station soon. Continuing to read, regarding the mass production of Kabane warrior, the higher-ups' intention was to slow down for now and observe Steve Gus's subsequent performance. For example, whether there were any side effects. These things still needed to be tested by time. At the same time, they wanted to understand the Kabane warrior manufacturing technology of this world to see if there were any merits. Putting everything else aside, only those with sufficiently strong haki or who had mastered life return could adapt to the Kabanari virus. This threshold was a bit too high. Although this kind of combat power could not be said to be extremely rare, it was not at the point where it could be wasted casually. Therefore, they would discuss expanding the scale when the time was ripe. Overall, the world government still had some doubts about the reliability of the Kabane warrior. Senior Director Addison also agreed with this. After all, it was a strength derived from a supernatural artificial biochemical virus. It was indeed appropriate to be cautious. Chapter 165, Another Empty Throne Conference. Deep into the night, the bright moon hung high, and starlight filled the sky. The city of Holy Land Mary Ejos, situated at the summit of the Red Line, was as brightly lit as ever, shining with golden light, fully displaying the nobility of the highest authority. Inside Pangaea Castle, Im once again sat on the empty throne, looking down at the 5 figures kneeling on the red carpet below. To be honest, it had been a while since any of them had been here. After all, everyone was busy. And some matters that weren't particularly important naturally didn't require a meeting in this place, but today was different. The matter the 5 elders were seeking instructions on this time concerned the Marines. Lord Imu, the director of the Biochemical Research Institute, Dr. Fritz, has requested technical support for a technology capable of resolving the negative emotions such as fear, bloodthirst, and brutality contained within the Kabanari virus. After discussion, we believe that the Chief of Staff of Marine Headquarters, Tsuru, can provide assistance, specifically by using the wash-wash fruit ability of the Paramsha system to wash away the extreme negative emotions of the infected who have lost their autonomy. However, this would inevitably require revealing the matter of the Stargate to Marine Headquarters. As this matter is of great importance, we had no choice but to ask for Lord's personal instruction. Saint Topman Warkery, kneeling in the center, stated respectfully in a deep voice. His voice was full of vigor, echoing throughout the dark and cold main hall. Im listened and began to ponder. He understood what these people meant. The Marines would definitely need to know about the Stargate matter. Many high-ranking officials in various departments within the world government already knew about it. It was just that the 5 elders had not yet issued the order for internal disclosure to the Grand Committee, so the high-ranking officials maintained a tacit understanding, I know, but we don't speak of it. On such matters, no one dared to speak out. Otherwise, once there was a problem, the informant would certainly be fine, but their life would likely be gone. But the key question was, when was the appropriate time to let Marine Headquarters know? Following from this, when should internal disclosure happen? When should full public disclosure happen? These were all matters that needed consideration. And the reason they hadn't told Marine headquarters yet was, firstly, because the small Stargate was truly too small. Let alone warships, even vehicles couldn't pass through. What was the point of telling the Marines then? Secondly, the Marines had a lot of things they needed to be busy with recently, so there was no need to tell them at all. But now the Biochemical Research Institute had a need. Finally, IM issued the highest order. Tomorrow, the Supreme Military Command will convene the high-ranking officials of the three forces to convey the matter of the Stargate, and at the same time, gradually proceed with the reform according to the original plan. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn immediately replied respectfully. We respectfully obey your imperial will. The five elders and others also understood IM's meaning. It seemed he agreed to Tsuru going to the Stargate world. Oh, right, for ease of address, it now had a code name. Namely, number 0001 Kabinarai World. Lord Imu, the idea of releasing the citizens of the non-affiliated nation to Keela Wolf and having the prisoners from the first 4 underground levels of Impel Down and other prisons take over the bridge building labor is truly extremely wise. However, the manpower, military power, and number of ships required for this plan are too vast. It will be difficult to complete in a short time. Preliminary estimates suggest it will take at least 1 to 2 years to minimize the negative impact on the bridge building project. Im, seated on the empty throne, nodded inwardly upon hearing this. Indeed. To send nearly 1 million citizens from the non-affiliated nation back to their hometowns, and then send hundreds of thousands of prisoners to the bridge on the sea to replace the former Im bridge building, this process would certainly be very long and tedious. Putting everything else aside, the Marines would definitely be busy again, as their warships would be needed for escorting in either case. This was fine. The current Stargate was too small to be used by the Marines anyway. Let them contribute to the construction of the home world. However, perhaps a basic shipyard could be built in the Kabinarai world, and a warship could be built using local materials to see how it goes. He immediately ordered this idea to be carried out. Lord, is it necessary to summon shipwrights from Water 7? St. Topman Warcurry's question was coldly refused by him. He did not want people outside the world government to know about the Stargate world yet. Although Water 7 had contracted a batch of marine warships, and even exclusively possessed the War Beast-class warships used for the Buster Call. This did not mean that all warships were built by them. There were actually quite a few islands capable of building warships. Water 7 was just the most famous. Moreover, the world government itself also had some of its own shipyards. There was certainly no shortage of shipwrights. At most, because their skills were not as high as the experts from Water 7, their shipbuilding efficiency was not as high. This was completely acceptable. Accelerate the establishment of the Ministry of Police Affairs within the Judiciary, and the Bounty Research Department at Marine Headquarters must also be transferred as soon as possible. Im's cold instruction carried noticeable displeasure. He was very dissatisfied with the work progress of the Judiciary. This made Jaga Ursha Saturn Saint extremely panicked, and cold sweat immediately beaded on his forehead. Lord Imu, our Judiciary has already initiated the plan for the Ministry of Police Affairs. Among them, the 100 marine branches selected in the 4 seas are being renovated into police stations, but the construction department has postponed this project to a later date on the grounds of lacking manpower. Also, the matter of selecting Navy soldiers to transfer to the police force has been temporarily refused by the Marines on the grounds that they need a large amount of military strength to fully implement this year's agenda item. As soon as he said this, St. Jaga Ursha Saturn, representing the military, and St. Topman Warcurry, representing the political affairs department, twitched their mouths. Their expressions with lowered heads also became displeased. He was complaining about them in front of Lord Imu. But the reasons given by the construction department and the Marines were also valid. These two departments had been the busiest in recent days, and looking at the current situation, they would be even busier in the future. So, what could be done about the lack of people? Could it be that for the sake of your judiciary establishing its own police force, they had to put down their major projects and major operations to cooperate with you? Dream on. Meanwhile, Saint Shepherd Jupiter, who was off to the side, although on the surface this matter seemed unrelated to him, in his heart he actually didn't really want this Ministry of Police Affairs to be established too quickly. The reason was simple. According to the division of authority in the plan, in the future, all criminal cases and civil cases occurring on land would be under the jurisdiction of the police department of the Ministry of Police Affairs. Even Cypher Paul, except for the highest level confidential missions, most of their operations would require permission from the Ministry of Police Affairs first. That is to say, in the future, even if Cypher Paul 9 agent were to execute an assassination, they would have to notify them first before taking action and killing someone. So what is considered the highest level confidential missions? Simply put, missions executed by Cypher Paul 0 agent could be done without notifying them first, but afterwards, The general situation still had to be explained to the Ministry of Police Affairs in the name of Cypherpol headquarters, to avoid the police investigating for a long time only to find out they were investigating their own people. This was a bit uncomfortable. Cypherpol had operated for hundreds of years. Where had they ever suffered such grievance and restraint? Chapter 166, Supreme Military Command Meeting, Part 1. As a result, among the five, only St. Marcus Mars, the top boss of the Proclamation Government Institute responsible for areas like history, technology, and propaganda, was still supportive of the Ministry of Police Affairs. After all, separating the military and police was beneficial for maintaining public order in various places, and with an additional police force, a new batch of technology equipment would definitely be needed, right? Furthermore, when the propaganda department organizes large-scale concerts or speech meetings in the future, the police are required by duty to come and maintain order. Unlike the current marine branches, which are truly indifferent and unresponsive, they always have to first greet the higher-ups at marine headquarters and then transmit orders layer by layer downwards. Only when it involves poneglyphs do they become serious. However, St. Marcus Mars knew that the Ministry of Police Affairs would face resistance not only from within the world government but also from the affiliated countries externally. After all, this was about seizing their judicial power. Currently, affiliated countries generally hand over civil disputes among the populace to constables hired by the various cities, and then make judgments based on their own domestic laws. In reality, these judgments are often based on the subjective ideas of the king or other nobility. After all, few kingdoms bother to create a comprehensive law code. Making laws too complete would often create constraints for the nobility as well. But the high and mighty Im doesn't care about this resistance or that resistance. First, establish the basic framework for the Ministry of Police Affairs using the affiliated countries in the first half of the Grand Line as a pilot program. Before December next year, every capital of an affiliated country must have a police station. Workers will be temporarily hired locally. Marine headquarters must transfer at least 10,000 Marine soldiers into the police force. The five elders maintain their kneeling and bowing posture, each with a different expression on their face, but no one dared to voice the slightest objection. We respectfully obey your imperial will. They knew that under Lord Demu's order, the establishment of the Ministry of Police Affairs was unstoppable, and this was bound to cause undercurrents in various countries in the first half of the Grand Line. The next day, 1 p.m. In front of the current World Government Office building in Marijawais, 2 rows of Holy Land Garrison warriors, clad in high-quality armor and holding spears, stood on either side of the road leading to the gate, serving as the most imposing background with their gaze fixed straight ahead. Step, 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 step. A moment later, the first person to arrive was a middle-aged man wearing full golden armor, a pure white cape draped over his back, and medium-length brown hair. He held a face-covering helmet in his left hand, his eyes scanning back and forth over the warriors on both sides with a complete lack of warmth. It's Fleet Admiral Lord. The Holy Land Garrison warriors present were extremely familiarized with this man, his figure practically etched into their souls. Everyone whose gaze was swept over by him subconsciously straightened their posture even further. Even the expression hidden beneath their helmets showed no change. They didn't even dare to watch him walk inside the gate, truly keeping their gaze fixed straight ahead. Knock, knock, knock. This Fleet Admiral Lord of the Holy Land Garrison arrived outside the meeting room belonging to the Supreme Military Command. He first adjusted his breathing, then gently knocked on the door. Enter. Lord. As soon as he saw the person sitting in the main seat at the meeting table, he immediately lowered his head and respectfully greeted. Zhang Shao, I knew the first person to arrive would be you. Have a seat. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn said, looking at him with a stern expression. His Shodai Kaitetsu, which he always cherished, lay quietly on the meeting table in front of him. Yes. Relax. Although this matter is related to your Holy Land Garrison, in essence, it's not. Just listen. Understood. The Holy Land Garrison Fleet Admiral named Zhang Shao replied respectfully, sitting upright. Meanwhile, outside the World Government Headquarters building, 3 men and 1 woman met. Looking at the shoulder insignias on their coats of justice, they were actually 2 admirals and 2 vice-admirals. Why are you here? Sengoku looked at Sakazuki, who was wearing a red suit, with great surprise. Khan beside him also had a puzzled look. Sakazuki calmly replied. The Supreme Military Command sent me a notification. It is quite strange. Logically, I shouldn't be qualified to attend a meeting of this level, but... Tsuru said, frowning in confusion. Normally, although she and Sakazuki were the chief of staff and an admiral candidate respectively, they were ultimately only of vice-admiral rank. Even if there was something they needed to know, it should be conveyed to them after Fleet Admiral Kong or Sengoku returned. Since Sakazuki is here, what about Borslino and Kyuzn? Sengoku asked. I don't know. Sakazuki answered truthfully. Kong knew about this. He said, Kuzan has already gone to the extreme ice continent to carry out a mission. Borsalino's G0 branch has just started, perhaps that's why they weren't called. Compared to them, Sakazuki's G1 branch was right next to Marijoi's, which was very convenient. Let's go, we'll know once we go in. Kong habitually gave the instruction, then led the way towards the World Government Headquarters gate. Sengoku, Tsuru, and Sakazuki followed in order. When they walked into the already open meeting room door, they saw the three people already seated at the meeting table. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn, the Dean of the Supreme Military Command. Ryman, the current Commander-in-Chief of the entire military. Zhang Shou, the current commander of the Holy Land Garrison. The first one goes without saying. The latter two both hold the admiral rank. Adding Kong and Sengoku, this meeting room gathered 4 admirals from the world government military. Zephyr should have come too, but he was busy treating his asthma on Drum Island and could only be absent. As for participating via visual den mushi in a video conference format, how could such a top-level military meeting allow that? There were no such rules yet. Let's begin. After the 4 Marines took their respective seats, the 5 elders didn't wait for them to ask questions. They waved their hands and instructed the government officials waiting nearby. These black-clothed officials didn't speak in reply, but efficiently placed the already prepared documents in front of each important figure. Immediately after, servants placed a cup of matcha on the table, and finally, led by the officials, they quickly left the meeting room, closing the door tightly on their way out. For a moment, the aroma of matcha filled the meeting room. This was Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn's hobby. You all take a look first. At this time, Sengoku and the others had already noticed that there were many documents this time, estimated to be 2 to 3 centimeters thick. After hearing the order, they silently opened the documents and began reading. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn was not in a hurry. He slowly savored the fragrance of the matcha, completely disregarding the increasingly surprised expressions of the others. Unconsciously, time flowed silently within the tea aroma. It took the 6 people nearly an hour just to read the documents. The content was simply too astonishing, and the aspects involved were extremely complex. The sheer information volume caused the few people present to frown deeply. After finishing, the few people exchanged glances, not even knowing where to begin speaking. At this moment, Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn looked at them with a stern, serious face. Let's talk about the Stargate first. Today is the 24th, 10 chapters will be released. Chapter 167, First Update, Supreme Military Command Meeting, Part 2. You do not need to know the origin of the Stargate. You only need to understand that the matters concerning the Stargate and the New World are real. Whether it's the Kabinari virus, the national map of Hinamoto, or the cities in that world known as stations by its people, the documents in your hands contain clear photos and explanations. As for on-site inspections, arrangements can be made for you to visit later. Especially Tsuru, you should have seen Dr. Fritz's request for technical support in the documents. Therefore, you need to head to the Shishikari base in the Kabinari world as soon as possible to cooperate with the Biochemical Research Institute in the research of the Kabinari virus. Hearing Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn's forceful order, which left no room for refusal, Tsuru's heart was filled with mixed emotions, and her shock had not completely subsided. Nevertheless, she calmly nodded and said, I understand. I also want to see this so-called new world. We'll pass for now. The Marines have too many matters to attend to here. We can go later. Kong and Sengoku exchanged glances, nodding in understanding, and the former stated their decision. I, on the other hand, would like to see it. In fact, Ryman, as the commander-in-chief of the entire military, already knew about the matters concerning the Kabinari world. As mentioned before, the army currently has no fleet admirals or admirals, so his main job is usually handling army affairs. Since the army's newly promoted vice admirals, Bullet and Crocodile, had been campaigning in the New World for so many days, it was impossible for him, the fleet admiral, not to know. However, knowing is one thing, but he had never personally been there, which inevitably made him curious. He thought about going with Tsuru to see and experience what the air of another world tasted like. I have no interest in it. My duty is to guard the Holy Land, and I cannot leave unless there are special circumstances. Zhang said expressionlessly. The previous incident where Rayleigh trespassed had already greatly angered him. Afterward, he directly purged all the Holy Land garrison responsible for guarding or patrolling the side facing the first half of the Grand Line. What made him feel most ashamed was that members of Cypher Paul began patrolling inside and outside the Holy Land in shifts. One must know that before this, these guys only served as personal bodyguards for the Celestial Dragons. Guarding and patrolling Mary Joyce was not their place to interfere. However, Commander Zhang had no idea that these Cypher Paul member agents, whom he regarded as power grabbers, were secretly cursing the Holy Land garrison as useless. Although they took turns, patrolling with observation hockey activated every day, spirit fatigue was an unavoidable matter. When had these elite men in black ever done such hard labor? It was all because these guys wearing broken armor were too useless. Alright, it is enough that you know about the matters concerning the Stargate world. When needed, orders will naturally be given to you. The Marines should continue to attend to their own matters. As you can see, the Stargate's width and height are insufficient, and warships cannot enter at all. Therefore, the Marines should not be needed for the time being. Kong, Sengoku, and the others naturally had no objection to Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn saying this, but with their political wisdom, they could also sense the change in the wind direction. The army was the pig standing at the vanguard of the Stargate, clearly set to receive strong support from the world government. Meanwhile, even though the Marines knew about the new world, they could only watch the army go in and out, which was quite frustrating. Next is the main topic of this meeting, concerning the reform of the subordinate departments of the Supreme Military Command. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn's tone became more serious and solemn. Upon hearing this, everyone present became solemn. Finally, it's the military's turn. This was the thought shared by Kong, Ryman, Zhang, Sengoku, Tsuru, and others at this moment. They had already noticed that the Political Affairs Department, Judiciary, and Proclamation Government Institute were undergoing internal reforms, with only Cypher Paul remaining unchanged. Therefore, they had long anticipated the arrival of this day. As for Sakazuki, he didn't care about these matters and just listened silently. This reform will start with the reorganization of the departments. To complete the reform thoroughly will certainly not be a matter that can be completed overnight. This was Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn telling them that the military's reform would not be rushed, and they should remain calm. First, the direct subordinate departments of the Supreme Military Command are divided into the Command Department, Staff Department, and Military and Political Department. The ministers of each department will be granted the admiral rank. The Command Department will oversee the various army headquarters. The fleet admirals and admirals of each army will automatically be designated as members of the Command Department. In cases involving joint operations of multiple military branches, the Minister of the Command Department will serve as the highest commander. Hearing these two sentences, Ryman's reaction was quite noticeable, but he waited until Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn finished speaking before asking. Then, the position of Commander-in-Chief of the entire military. The position of Commander-in-Chief of the entire military will be abolished. The latter said expressionlessly. This caused Ryman's heart to sink, and his expression also turned unpleasant. However, he thought that he might be transitioning from Commander-in-Chief of the entire military to Minister of the Command Department. After all, the two titles sounded somewhat similar, and if that were the case, it would be acceptable. At the same time, the positions of Army Marshal and 3 Army Admirals will be added, and the Holy Land Garrison will be transferred from the Supreme Military Command to the Grand Steward Institute, which is directly subordinate to the Supreme Executive Committee. Sengoku and the others had no particular thoughts upon hearing the first sentence, as it seemed to have little impact on them, only the title of their superior had changed slightly. But when the next sentence came out, the people from the Marines frowned. However, after learning about the matters concerning the Stargate world, it was only natural for the army to have fleet admirals and admirals, even if it sounded a bit uncomfortable. But Kong, Sengoku, Tsuru, and Sakazuki were very curious, where would the world government find 4 admiral-level combat power? Excellent! Exclaimed Zhang, the commander of the Holy Land Garrison, with great joy. What is the Supreme Executive Committee? The official name for the Room of Authority is the Supreme Executive Committee. The 5 elders are the Supreme Executive Committee members within it, and the Grand Steward Institute is directly subordinate to the Supreme Executive Committee. Its subordinate departments are the Holy Land Treasury and the Holy Affairs Department, which is responsible for serving the daily life of the celestial dragons. One manages the money bag, and the other is equivalent to a steward or attendant. In Jiang's view, the Holy Land Garrison should belong to the Grand Steward Institute. They were the personal guards of the celestial dragons, after all. How could they stay with troops like the Marines and the Army? It was demeaning. No wonder Lord said before that this reform has no substantial relationship with us. It is indeed true. Zhang sighed with great pleasure in his heart. The Staff Department is responsible for liaison between the 3 forces, logistics, equipment guarantee and procurement, and the allocation of the military budget. Its subordinate departments are the 1st Staff Department, 2nd Staff Department, and 3rd Staff Department. The division chiefs will be granted the Vice Admiral rank. As soon as Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn said this, everyone present focused their gaze on Tsuru, and Tsuru herself suddenly understood, finally realizing why she had been called here. Because she was about to be promoted to Admiral rank, she was naturally qualified to attend this meeting. However, this meant leaving Marine headquarters, which made her feel a bit sad, as it was the place she had stayed for most of her life. But Tsuru's eyes glanced at Sakazuki, who remained expressionless beside her, and she thought to herself, could he also be? Chapter 168, 2 Updates, Supreme Military Command Meeting, Part 2. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn ignored their little schemes and continued to announce the reform plan for the three forces, as this concerned the world government's future multiverse conquest and had to be taken seriously. The military and political department is responsible for the promotion and demotion of military officers below the rank of admiral in all forces. It also supervises military administration and manages the military academies of all forces, with subordinate departments being the Army Military Administration Division and the Navy Military Administration Division. Sengoku and Tsuru exchanged a glance after hearing this, both understanding that the candidate for the Minister of the Military and Political Department was likely Zephyr. No matter how they looked at it, there was no one more suitable than him. It seemed that if Zephyr hadn't needed medical treatment, he would have had to attend this meeting as well. Next, let's talk about the position adjustments for the few of you. Order. As the word order left St. Jaga Ursha Saturn's mouth, the 6 people on both sides of the meeting table immediately stood up. Current Fleet Admiral Kong is appointed as the Minister of the Command Department. What? Ryman looked at St. Jaga Ursha Saturn in shock, seeing that the other party was expressionless with no intention of explaining. He quickly looked at Kong, who was standing opposite him, and found that the latter also had a look of surprise. Current Commander-in-Chief of the entire military Ryman is appointed as Army Marshal. Ryman slightly lowered his head, his face gloomy, and didn't say a word. He had been demoted, and his subordinate had become his direct superior. But he didn't dare to express dissatisfaction with St. Jaga Ursha Saturn. He could only transfer it onto Kong, feeling that the other party might have done something in secret. Otherwise, he had clearly made no mistakes, so how could he be demoted? Current Marine Admiral Sengoku is promoted to Fleet Admiral. Lord, this way, our Marines will have no admirals. Sengoku said calmly, pointing out the issue, not particularly excited about the promotion. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn glanced at him. Current Marine Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp is promoted to Marine Admiral. What? What? Kong, Sengoku, and Tsuru were shocked again. Even Sakazuki was stunned for a moment. Immediately after, Sengoku said with a hesitant expression, Lord, Garp will likely refuse. However, St. Jaga Ursha Saturn didn't pay attention to his words. Instead, he addressed them all in a deep voice. From the moment the Stargate opened for us, from the moment the world government embarked on the conquest of other worlds, this warship we are on, moving at full speed, has no possibility of stopping, nor any so-called destination island. Although it was relatively smooth at the beginning, we all know this long voyage is very dangerous. No one knows when we will encounter powerful enemy ships and opponents, or even be counterattacked into our cabins. Facing such an unknown, dangerous, pitch-black ocean, we must mobilize all high-level combat power to escort and protect our ship. I think even Garp wouldn't want the other world armies to invade one day, right? Everyone fell silent. After a moment, Sengoku sighed. I understand. I will persuade Garp. What about the Army Admiral? Ryman asked expressionlessly. Current Marine Vice Admiral, Admiral Candidate, Sakazuki is transferred to the Army and promoted to Army Admiral. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn said in a deep voice. This made everyone's gaze focus on Sakazuki. Sengoku, who was already Fleet Admiral, had an even uglier expression, but the most intense reaction came from the person himself. I refuse. Sakazuki was furious and said through gritted teeth. My goal is to clear out the trash on the sea, not to play in the dirt on land. Ryman's already unhappy mood became even more displeased. What do you mean play in the dirt? Can you speak properly? You can leave now. Sakazuki, stay. St. Jaga Ursha Saturn issued the order in a deep voice. Sengoku and the others looked at each other, and finally could only leave silently. After everyone had left, only the two of them remained in the meeting room. Sakazuki, I know you are not a reckless person. You should be very clear that given the current world environment, pirates cannot be completely eliminated. As long as sea trade exists, pirates will be difficult to eliminate, and our Azure Blue Star happens to be a planet with an exceptionally vast ocean area. When it came to impressions of Marine high-level officers, St. Jaga Ursha Saturn appreciated Sakazuki the most. Sengoku could only rank second. Because he is a perfect soldier. Although Sengoku is also considered perfect, he is not as thoroughly perfect as the former. But transferring him from the Marines to the Army is indeed somewhat difficult. To be honest, it was quite a headache before, but no matter what, it still had to be said and still had to be done. There's no other way. Because the Army is short on people. With all due respect, I think that's because the current Marines' attitude towards pirates is too weak. If you are willing to fully support me, I will definitely clear out all the trash on the sea within 10 years. Sakazuki, I appreciate your confidence, but you must remember that having confidence doesn't necessarily mean things will turn out well. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn very rarely softened his dominant attitude. Even if you use 10 years, or even 20 years, to kill all the pirates of a certain period, what about after that? When your generation ends, pirates will still emerge like fish in the sea. What are you prepared to do? This. Sakazuki was stunned. You should be familiar with Thunder Dragon Alda from 200 years ago, right? Of course. In the long history of the Marines, he was also a fleet admiral who ranked among the foremost, a Logia system rumble fruit ability user, the founder who created what was called the Great Marine Era. Sakazuki was very respectful towards this Marine fleet admiral, who was also called the strongest in history in terms of combat power and had the most rigid and ruthless attitude towards pirates. Then you should know that during his tenure, pirates were basically eliminated by more than half. It was even difficult to find a pirate with a bounty over 100 million. Unfortunately, less than 20 years after his death, pirates flourished again. Now we finally understand the source. Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn looked calmly at Sakazuki and said, the rampant slave trade, the kingdom's complex taxes, the nobility's extreme oppression, the harsh maritime environment and transportation, scarce living resources, and the excessive amount of heavenly tribute are all forcing large numbers of citizens to rush into the Great Sea to become pirates. Sakazuki was completely shocked. He didn't expect the other party to explain things so thoroughly, even questioning the heavenly tribute. So we started to change. I believe you have also seen that we are changing. Because we believe that as long as these problems are solved, we can completely eradicate pirates, this world's scourge. At least prevent it from growing too large and serious. Don't you think this is the best way to eliminate pirates? Then what does this have to do with me joining the army? Sakazuki asked unwillingly. Because the army is the main force for conquering the multiverse in the future. Legal system issues can be improved step by step through the reverie. The royalty and nobility of various countries can also be dealt with. Sea transportation can be handed over to the sea train currently being developed. But resources can only be solved by you. If there is an entire, or even multiple worlds' resources, such as grain, meat, freshwater, timber, metal, and ore, freely harvested, then the citizens of our world can truly have ample food and clothing, be well fed and warmly clothed, and live a wealthy life. Then how many people would still be willing to risk their lives with weapons on the dangerous Great Sea? Sakazuki heard this, and his expression was no longer so angry and unwilling. Although still somewhat conflicted and hesitant, his gaze became much calmer. But when he heard Saint Jaga Ursha Saturn's next sentence, his expression changed greatly again. The most crucial point is whether you are willing to entrust something so important to our entire world, such an important army, to a few people who came from a pirate background? For example, letting Douglas Barrett or Crocodile be the future army marshal? What? Chapter 169, Third Watch, The World Government Confronts the Shogunate. Kubenrai World. The dark iron armored train, Katetsugio, was undergoing its usual evening maintenance. The citizens and soldiers inside the train began to disembark, move freely within a certain area. In 3 hours, they would continue their journey towards Hidden Stone's Village Station, the final gate to Kongakaku. How is it? Any new instruction from over there? Inside the train, Mata hadn't gone out. When she saw Lucci return from outside and sit beside her, her soft body, clad in a light yellow kimono, leaned against him, like a couple still in the throes of love. This caused some of the women nearby to blush and turn away, quickly leaving the Sen carriage, giving them a brief private space. And this was exactly the result Mata wanted. Through communication with these people, she had discovered that their thought was still very conservative. Even slightly overly familiar jokes could make them blush, both men and women alike. In their impression, or rather, in rumors, people from the European continent were more open and enthusiastic in personality, and coincidentally, their appearance was mostly hooked noses, blue eyes, and various shades of yellow hair. So their current actions actually fit the Hinamoto people's perception of them. They want us to stop Mima Amatori from destroying Kongakaku. When do we act? Mata looked at Lucci eagerly. The latter gave her a speechless glance and asked in a low voice. How many targets can the two of us control? This. Wait. It's not too late to act after we rendezvous with the other team at Hidden Stone's Village Station. For now, we just need to follow them. Mata was a little disappointed after hearing this and didn't say anything more. It was just one more day of waiting, she had that much patience. Her idea was correct. As Katetsugio started moving again, one night passed in the blink of an eye. With the sound of the alarm whistle, it signaled that they were about to arrive outside Hidden Stone's Village Station City. This made everyone, young and old, inside the Iron Fortress incredibly excited. The atmosphere in each carriage instantly became much livelier. Lucci and Mata also exchanged silent glances. It was time. They knew that the world government was finally going to make its move. From this moment on, they no longer needed to overly hide their identity. Everyone, because Hidden Stone's Village Station has prohibited the Hunter Guard's Katetsugyo from entering the city, we will need to disembark here in advance and walk to Hidden Stone's Village Station. Please prepare yourselves and queue up to get off the train. At this moment, the pleasant voice of Yatsugawa Ilm sounded through the communication channel. However, this news made the citizens inside the Iron Fortress feel confused. Why? Why aren't the liberators allowed in together? Exactly. How can they treat Lord Biba like this? Despite the widespread discussion, when it was time to disembark, everyone obediently got off. No one was willing to stay outside the city with the Hunter Guard just because they were receiving unfair treatment. They were just talking. What should we do? Mata noticed something was wrong. Get off the train first, but don't enter the city. Our first and second targets are both in the Hunter Guard. Then, wait for the other team to arrive. When most of the people in this carriage had left, Lucci pulled off his loose kimono and threw it aside, revealing the black suit and clean shirt underneath. He then took out his dark red sunglasses from his pocket and put them on. Seeing this, Mata also casually took off her kimono. In an instant, the two of them had reverted to their Leech Cypher Pal 9 agent appearance. They then quickly left from the rear of the train. At the same time, inside the front of the Katetsugyo, Mima Amatori and the cadres of the Hunter Guard were gathered. Even the little girl in red named Mumai was here. This was strange, as she had previously been acting with Yatsugawa Ilm and others from the Iron Fortress. They say the latest instruction from Kongakaku has arrived, stating that the Hunter Guard cannot pass through here. This man with short, tea-green hair was named Shrio. He was considered the #1 cadre of the Hunter Guard, skilled in shooting, and liked to wear night vision goggles, though he was also good with a blade. What an unreasonable request. Mumai complained, frowning. It's clear the general is afraid of Lord Biba. Shrio said, looking at Mima Amatori. And Hidden Stone's Village Gate is the final fortress leading to Kongakaku. So it won't be easy to get through, huh? Ryu, one of the cadres, quipped. This person was about 1.7 meters in height, with medium-length light blue hair, and dressed in a very ninja-like style. His weapon was the pair of short blades crossed on his back. He was considered the strongest ordinary person in terms of combat power among the Hunter Guard. Precisely because of this, we have made numerous preparations, haven't we? Mima Amatori revealed a slight smile, unconcerned, and said. I just didn't expect to have to use them here first. On the other side, Lucci and Mata, hidden in the wilderness, stared at the Katetsugyo not far from them. You said, if Mima Amatori's goal is to destroy Kongakaku to get revenge on his general father, then now that he's blocked in this place, what will he do next? Mata heard this question, thought for a moment, and guessed. If this is truly the only passage, then unless the Hunter Guard chooses to abandon the train and walk around Hidden Stone's Village Station, there's only one option. Force their way through. Lucci nodded, agreeing with her thought, but this also made him hesitate, wondering whether to step in and stop them now. However, acting now carried too great a possibility of accidents, mainly because there weren't enough people and there were too many targets. Let's wait a bit longer. The people from the other team should be arriving soon. They'll definitely arrive by the afternoon at the latest. The Hunter Guard side should also be cautious. After all, if they made a move, it would be equivalent to completely confronting the Kongakaku side. Also, the city gate of Hidden Stone's Village Station truly lived up to its reputation as the gate to the shogunate capital. Whether it was the height of the city gate, or the number of soldiers and garrison cannon on top, it was clearly several times strong than the previous Shiori station. In Lucci's opinion, even if Mima Amatori had hundreds of Kabane locked in the carriage, he wouldn't necessarily be able to easily break through the city gate's defense. Considering everything from a cautious perspective, he decided to wait and see. Look, Mima Amatori is coming out. Mata's voice alerted Lucci, who was deep in thought, who quickly looked up. Indeed, Mima Amatori, accompanied by the short-haired blonde woman behind him and a little girl in red, rode tall horse towards the open Hidden Stone's Village Station city gate, guarded by 4 armed cavalry. However, the latter two were sharing a horse, likely because Mumai was still too young. However, the other Hunter Guard cadres and soldiers remained around the Katetsugyo. It seems the chief steward of Hidden Stone's Village Station invited him in for a talk. Is it possible they can resolve the passage issue through dialogue? Mata asked softly. But for us, the longer the time is dragged out, the better. If the Hunter Guard is allowed to pass through here immediately, then we'll have to find a way to stop them. For Lucci, The best outcome was for the group from the Iron Fortress led by Yatsugawa Ayam and the group from the Katetsugyo led by the Hunter Guard to both stay put at Hidden Stone's Village Station. Once their Cypher Pal 9 agent troops were all assembled, they could directly apprehend them and, incidentally, use this place as a stronghold for the world government's subsequent dialogue with the shogunate side in Kongakaku. You sneak into the city and follow Mima Amatori. Although the three of them are Kabane warrior, based on their combat power performance, they haven't reached a level to confront a large force. Keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't die. Okay. Mata nodded and instantly turned into an afterimage, leaving at high speed. She needed to find a section of the city wall that wouldn't attract too much attention to enter inside the city. Chapter 170, 4th Update, Cypher Pal 9 Agent Lucci begins the slaughter. Inside the governor's mansion within Hidden Stone's Village Station City, if Im were here, they might complain that every station's governor's mansion in Hinamoto is built to resemble a smaller version of Osaka Castle. The guests have arrived. As two half-white, red-skirted maids knelt on the floor and slowly pulled the doors open to the sides, Mima Amatori, Meko, and Mumai appeared before everyone. According to Lucci's observation, Haki, Meko, the golden-haired beauty, seemed to also be a Kabane warrior, or Kabanari. Our first visit. I am the chief of the Hunter Guard, Mima Amatori. Meanwhile, Yatsugawa Ayam, who was conversing with Steward Maeda, and the red-hair woman kneeling behind her, also shifted their gaze to the three of them. This red-hair woman's name was Yukina, the conductor responsible for driving the Iron Fortress train, possessing a familiarity with iron-armored trains far exceeding ordinary people. However, both were surprised by the appearance of the red-clothed girl, Mumai. Ah, what an honor, to finally witness the true face of the liberation hero. Steward Maeda, wearing round glasses, chuckled with a smile, appearing to be a very approachable person. Please, have a seat. Thank you very much. But just as Mima Amatori finished thanking him and took a step into the reception room paved with redwood floor, a strong samurai on the right raised his steam gun and politely aimed it at the former's temple. This caused Meko to immediately step in front, her dagger hidden in her sleeve ready to strike. Stop. Sakaki. Lord Biba is here to negotiate. Steward Maeda, seeing his samurai steward's rudeness, quickly reprimanded him, but the latter remained unmoved, coldly saying, if it's a conversation, it can still proceed with a gun pointed at him, can it? Please sit. At the same time, Mata, dressed in a black dress and high heels, quietly arrived on the roof of the reception room. Because the governor's mansion was situated on higher ground, she could enjoy the most comfortable sunlight and the coolest wind from her position, and also take in the scenery of the entire Hidden Stone's Village Station city. However, Mata had no interest in these things. Her observation Haki had already covered the entire governor's mansion, top to bottom. Hey, as expected. She noticed that around the reception room, there were over 30 gun-wielding soldiers and 3 samurai with relatively strong auras, armed with blades, clearly poised to rush in and apprehend them the moment negotiations broke down. Clang, clang, clang. Suddenly, the alarm bell rang out from the direction of the city gate, loud enough to be heard throughout Hidden Stone's Village Station and beyond. This caused Mata to suddenly raise her head and look into the distance, but she immediately lowered her gaze back to the roof tiles beneath her. Because she sensed that Mima Amatori had suddenly stood up and killed the samurai who was pointing the steam gun at his head. Meko, who had the same golden hair but was distinct, also quickly got up and dealt with another samurai attempting to shoot. He's directly made a move. At this moment, Mata realized the situation had become tricky. Their people hadn't arrived yet. Lucci's instruction was for her to keep an eye on Mima Amatori. But from the current situation, it was Mima Amatori who was killing others. Meanwhile, outside the city gate of Hidden Stone's Village Station. What's going on? Lucci watched in surprise as the massive drawbridge-style city gate automatically lowered. Just as he thought this was the result of Mima Amatori's negotiations inside the city, he suddenly saw a group of Hunter Guard black-clad soldiers in the distance driving steam motorcycles, spraying fresh blood as they went, attracting a large number of wild Kabane to surge towards the open gate. Not only that. Another group of motorcycles, led by Ryu, first cut the ropes that pulled the drawbridge city gate, then with skillful blade techniques, cut down several gate guards who didn't have time to shoot, and finally rushed inside the city. This is troublesome. Why is this Mima Amatori guy so impatient? Lucci watched helplessly as large numbers of Kabane successfully surged into Hidden Stone's Village Station. This city was finished. Now he had to consider his next operation. At this moment, the dark iron armored train Katetsugyo began moving along the track, clearly intending to follow into the city. Can't let it leave Hidden Stone's Village Station. Having made his decision, he moved at high speed, easily boarding the roof of the moving Katetsugyo. Dressed in black, he stood out somewhat because he was no longer concealing himself. But neither the defending soldiers nor the attacking hunter guard paid attention to this. At this time, Hidden Stone's village Station City had completely fallen into a state of desperate chaos. Dense, muffled gunshots echoed one after another, and Cobain chasing people to bite were everywhere. It was like stepping into a living dead feast, a scene that made Lucci frown. He wondered how terrifying it would be if something like Cobain became rampant in the home world. Mutta is watching Mima Amatori over there. I'll take down that researcher first. His observation hockey's mental fluctuation swept out, quickly locating the target Sora. Then he rapidly ran from the roof of the moving train and jumped onto the connection point between the two train cars. Duina, without any hesitation, Lucci kicked open the tightly shut iron door, and the flying iron door immediately smashed a black-clad soldier inside against the iron door of the other end of the train car. He didn't even have time to let out a scream before his entire body was crushed between the two iron doors, and a large amount of blood surged from his damaged chest and internal organs. This scene stunned Dr. Shawai and the 3 white-clothed researchers inside the train car, but the 11 black-clad soldiers responsible for guard duty quickly reacted. "Who are you?" "Shoot." Bang. 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 As they pulled the triggers, the personal high-pressure steam boilers carried behind the waist, connected to the steam guns via tubing, provided a high output of high-pressure steam to the bullets fired, giving them an impact force at close range that ordinary firearms lacked. However, in their eyes, the man in black walking towards them step by step wasn't hit by a single bullet. They whistled through the air and struck the iron plating behind him, splashing out brilliant sparks. This scene made the hunter's soldiers look as if they had seen a ghost, even momentarily doubting their marksmanship was too poor. "Charge. Grab him first." Several black-clad soldiers standing at the front exchanged glances, then directly picked up their steam guns, preparing for melee combat to apprehend him. Their guns were all fitted with bayonets, and coupled with years of experience fighting Cobain at close range, they felt no fear in their hearts. Puff puff puff, but while they wanted melee combat, Lucci had no interest. He casually flicked his clean fingernails a few times, and several invisible air bullets instantly flew out, creating bloody holes in everyone's throats in the blink of an eye. This was flying finger pistol, a technique only those with extremely high mastery of finger pistol could achieve. In the eyes of Dr. Shawai and the others, the black-clad man who had suddenly burst in did nothing, yet those 3 soldiers fell to the ground, and large amounts of blood surged from below their necks. "Shoot, shoot. Quick, shoot." Now the remaining black-clad soldiers no longer thought about apprehending him in melee combat, frantically pulling their triggers and continuously spraying bullets towards Lucci. But it was the same. The latter merely twitched slightly, and the bullets would inexplicably graze past him. Then amidst screams of terror, he easily killed one black-clad soldier after another who blocked his path, finally walking up to Dr. Shawai and the 2 others. "Excuse me, are you the scientist researching the Kubanrai virus?" Lucci stopped and revealed a kind smile. Chapter 171, Fifth Watch, The Reappearance of Black Smoke. "Who are you?" Zhuangwei, relying on the rationality of a black biochemical scientist, forced himself to calm down and looked at Lucci with a serious face. The 2 young researchers behind him were already trembling from fright. "Let's get acquainted. My name is Lucci, and I am a special investigator from the world government. We have been observing you for some time and would like to invite you to come with us to Shishikari base." Lucci stated his identity directly, but considering that explaining Cypherpal would be a bit troublesome, he just casually came up with an easy-to-understand term. "And you?" "I." Zhuangwei looked at him bewildered, thinking to himself. "What is the world government?" "It's over at Dr. Zhuangwei. Quick, 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 we can't let anything happen to the doctor." But just as he was about to say his name to stall for time, black-clad soldiers from another train car who heard the commotion ran over as a group. "Noisy." Lucci's face turned cold, and he turned his head. Suddenly, he lifted his right leg wearing black trousers and kicked out fiercely towards the direction of the train car that was missing an iron door. Swish! The next moment, Zhuangwei and the other 2 were shocked to see a crescent-shaped blue blade of light generated out of thin air. Then, at an extremely astonishing speed, it flew out horizontally, severing the dozen or so black-clad soldiers who rushed over at the waist. Instantly, the sounds of meat hitting the ground were heard one after another, and it also incidentally cut the train car iron door behind them into 2 sections. "Ah! My guts, no, I don't want to die." Lucci didn't spare another glance at these dead people. His dark red glasses turned towards Zhuangwei, whose face was pale, and he smiled, saying, "Dr. Zhuangwei, please stay by my side from now on, so I can conveniently protect your safety." "Did you just kick out that wind pressure just by kicking your leg?" Zhuangwei asked, touching his fiercely beating heart with his right hand and suppressing his shock. Lucci smiled and said, "Oh, you were actually able to see some of the principle just by looking once? As expected of a scientist valued by the Biochemical Research Institute. Is that true? But how is that possible? How much strength would that level of wind pressure require? Are you a Kabinari too?" Zhuang Wei truly found it unbelievable. "No, that's not right. Even a Kabinari couldn't do this matter. Are you a new? Oh, I wonder what this new you mentioned is?" Lucci asked curiously, thinking to himself, could it be that this world also has combat power with a Doriki value close to 400 or 500? Zhuang Wei fell silent. Lucci didn't mind seeing this and smiled, saying, "Since that's the case, then come off the train car with me first. Never mind, you should stay here. It's more chaotic outside." Once outside, they would definitely encounter more attacks from black-clad soldiers. He wasn't afraid, but who knows if a stray bullet might target this doctor. Inside this train car, at least the surroundings have iron armor protection, making it a bit more convenient to protect him. Swish, just at this moment, an afterimage with the sound of braking air entered the train car. However, Lucci made no move regarding this. Instead, Zhuang Wei and the other two were dumbfounded to see a beauty with a sexy body and excellent looks, with blonde hair and a black dress, suddenly appear beside Lucci. Only a blurry black shadow remained on their retinas. How did it go? Mata got straight to the point and replied. "Mima Amatori killed the chief steward and the samurai steward here, and just came back with Yatsugawa Ayam. What about now? Now he's taken that short blonde-haired woman to the front of the train car. As for Yatsugawa Ayam, she's being held. Also, I saw the hunter guards slaughtering the Hidden Stones Village tow station soldiers who wanted to board the train car and escape. Mata, you watch over Dr. Zhuang Wei. Oh, and these two researchers too, but they aren't important. If they move around, just kill them." Lucci ordered with a cold face. "What about you? I'm going to capture Mima Amatori, and then wait for the other teams to arrive." Having said that, Lucci turned and walked away, quickly disappearing into the train car. But neither he nor Mata noticed the expectation and mockery in Zhuang Wei's gaze. "Go ahead. Mima should be awakening Meko over there." Although these two strange guys seem strong, the strength of the new is clearly even more terrifying. It seems I'll soon have more interesting test subjects. Lucci's progress was very fast. But when he arrived at the front of the train car's position, he found that Mima Amatori's aura was not here. Instead, a blue-clothed samurai was wielding a glowing long saber, while nimbly dodging the shooting from steam guns and continuously cutting down and killing the black-clad soldiers blocking the way beside Yatsugawa Ayam and Yukina. "Kurisu. Be careful." Upon seeing this, and realizing that this Yatsugawa Ayam was also one of the target individuals the base specifically named to protect, Lucci instantly disappeared from the roof of the Katetsugio train car. The next second, he suddenly appeared in front of Yatsugawa Ayam. Finger gun, Yellow Lotus. His appearance was too sudden. The surrounding hunters' soldiers had no time to react at all. Amidst the dense afterimages of finger pistol, they were pierced, leaving blood holes one after another, screaming and collapsing to the ground. Yatsugawa Ayam and Yukina, two girls who had just recently become adults, were completely scared stiff. Although both of them had brave personalities, fundamentally they were still ordinary people. To their senses, with just a blink of an eye, a black afterimage appeared in front of them. Then blurry afterimages in clumps spread out in all directions. Immediately after, the soldiers died on the ground, spurting blood. Not until the people had completely fallen into the pool of blood did the two finally see clearly the back view in front of them. This was a very tall person whose clothing should be Western clothes, but what attracted attention was still the two sparkling blue diamond earrings on their ears. "Go to the fourth train car. Someone there will protect you." Hearing such a crisp and decisive instruction, Yatsugawa Ayam asked nervously. "Ah, this. May I ask, who are you?" "I am Lord." At this moment, that blue-clothed samurai named Kurisu had already dealt with the black-clad soldiers around him. He was seen walking over quickly, holding a long saber coated with a layer of Kabinari heart membrane, and staring vigilantly at Lucci's face. He naturally saw the process of Lucci instantly dealing with 7 or 8 soldiers. To be honest, he didn't see it very clearly, but precisely because of this, he concluded that the other party was a dangerous person. And this dangerous person was standing right in front of Miss Ayam, whom he deeply and secretly loved. "Your blade is not bad." As soon as Lucci saw Kurisu's gaze that was willing to die for the woman he loved, he roughly understood something. This made him appreciate the other party a little. Because they were the same kind of people. It's just that you're too weak. If you want to protect your woman, you still need to become stronger. Just as Lucci walked past Kurisu, He heavily patted the latter's shoulder. Actually, Kurisu subconsciously wanted to dodge, but the former's hand speed was too fast. His body hadn't even had time to make a move before he was pressed down by the palm. This made him understand how big the gap in strength was between himself and the man in black in front of him. But such a shocked feeling was then thrown into disarray by the other party's one sentence. "Ah. No, what are you talking about?" Kurisu's face instantly turned red, and his gaze darted around, at a loss. The Tatsugawa Iom was also stunned for a moment, but after she came to her senses, she also looked foolishly at this young samurai in front of her who had always protected her. Roar. Suddenly, a roar like a wild beast attracted everyone's attention. Lucci's sharp eyes under his dark red glasses narrowed. He saw that in the direction of the city gate, there was a huge, pitch-black monster roaring with its head raised there. Is that the black smoke Dr. Fritz mentioned? Chapter 172, 6th update, Encountering the New. Ah, what is that thing? How is this possible? Why did the black smoke suddenly appear here? The Hidden Stones Village tow station soldiers, who were constantly shooting at the cabane below from the city wall, were completely dumbfounded as they watched the black aggregate rapidly form from below the city wall at a speed visible to the naked eye. Logically, even if there was black smoke, it should have walked over from a distance, giving everyone time to accept and prepare. But what was happening now? Fire. Fire the cannon. Fire the cannon immediately. Stop this thing before it's fully formed. A samurai holding a long saber mustered his courage and shouted at the surrounding soldiers. Yes, yes, yes. The soldiers snapped out of it, realizing that staying stunned was no different from waiting for death. Especially those standing next to the garrison cannon, they quickly raised the gun barrel that was aimed at the cabane below the city. Boom. 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 7 or 8 cannons on the city walls to the left and right of the city gate fired a volley almost simultaneously. Amidst the fierce flames, cannonballs slammed into the body of the black smoke that was close at hand. Immediately, bursts of gunfire flash expanded within it one after another. As large chunks of black debris were blown to pieces, it raised its head and let out a mournful scream. Deep within it, Meko, wrapped in a cocoon of countless black viscous threads, also let out a scream, clearly hurt by the cannons. At this moment, it was evening. The fiery clouds in the sky dyed the background red. The still bright sunset watched the desperate city being ravaged. This giant black monster was completely enraged. Taking advantage of the moment the soldiers were reloading cannonballs, it quickly replenished its damaged body using the constantly surging cabane and then pressed down on the city wall in front of it. Ah! No. In the despair of hundreds of city guard soldiers and samurai, their eyes splitting with rage, the black smoke directly crushed a section of the city wall next to the city gate with a move that lacked any technology. Immediately, dust and smoke soared into the sky, rubble was everywhere, and a thunderous loud noise echoed throughout the entire Hidden Stones Village tow station sky. That's what we often call the new. It's an artificial fusion collective with a Kabinari as the core. Although it looks like ordinary black smoke is just one of its abilities. Just how strong it is truly exciting. On the Kotetsugyo train, Zhuangwei no longer cared about Mada's surveillance beside him. He held the telescope in front of his neck and excitedly watched his experiment result. Using the blue light heart cabane's plasma, known as the black smoke core, as the main materials, supplemented by other biochemical materials and technology, he developed something called black blood. Because it can greatly enhance the effect of the Kabinari virus, as long as it is injected into the chest of a Kabinari with a syringe, they will turn into this extremely powerful new. What did you say? An artificial black smoke. At this time, Yatsugawa Iom, the train conductor Yukina, and the samurai Kurisu were also nearby. They ultimately chose to listen to Lucci's opinion. The outside was simply too chaotic and dangerous. And now, all three were stunned by Dr. Shawai's crazy remarks. There's actually something like this? Mata looked at the black smoke in surprise. This thing looked quite powerful. At the same time, she felt a little worried about Lucci, who was acting alone. On the other side. On the chaotic battlefield filled with gunfire flash, thick smoke, blood, and death, Mima Amatori paid no mind to the indiscriminate slaughter of the soldiers under his command. The so-called indiscriminate meant that regardless of whether they were Kabane or human, as long as they were not a member of the Hunter Guard, any approaching person would be shot and killed with their steam guns. Because they occupied a position of the station, it was equivalent to blocking the only way out for the citizens and soldiers of the entire Hidden Stones Village tow station, leaving the latter in a desperate situation of being attacked from both front and back. Mima Amatori just coldly watched the black smoke in the distance. That was the result of Meko sacrificing his life for him, but there was no hint of emotion or guilt in his heart. To him, everything was just a tool. Elder brother. Mima Amatori saw the girl with twin pigtails and a red dress running over and said with a smile, You did very well, Mumai. Didn't you ask me to open the gate so everyone on the Kotetsugyo could enter the city? Why? Mumai looked at him anxiously and shouted. Yes, the city gate drawbridge that Lucci saw suddenly fall earlier was opened by her own hands. Now, seeing the tragic situation that occurred because of her, the girl's heart was filled with immense torment and pain. She urgently needed an explanation from her elder brother. Look, Mumai. Mima Amatori turned his head and glanced at this living hell they had personally created, saying softly. This is the world of fairness and equality that we pursue. Corpses gnawed by Cabane, houses collapsing in flames, living dead whose hearts were lit up after coming back to life, plasma, broken blades, and damaged guns everywhere. Against the backdrop of the evening sky, it was simply the most beautiful scenery. Only the experts are worthy of living in this world. The weak have no authority to live. After speaking, he no longer paid attention to Mumai and slowly walked forward alone. This made the girl Mumai finally realize that she had been deceived, completely deceived by this elder brother she had always admired. This left her at a loss, standing there foolishly, not knowing what to do. At this moment, the black smoke that had crushed the city wall suddenly began to let out a mournful wail. At the same time, the black body on its body, covered in red light veins, began to peel off from the surface like mud. TCH, damn it, it's much faster than expected. As expected, the heart iron alone cannot completely block the virus from invading the brain. Dr. Shawai watched the black smoke completely collapse with unwillingness. For this artificial black smoke to last, it must be ensured that the consciousness of the Kabanrai serving as the core is relatively clear. Otherwise, it can only be an ordinary nu. However, he hadn't made these things clear to Mima Amatori. Anyway, even if something went wrong, he could explain it as an accident. As for the lives of Mekko and these Kabanrai, he didn't care at all. In his eyes, the experiment result was what was important. However, given Mima Amatori's personality, he probably wouldn't care either. Ms. Mata, could you tell me about the world government you mentioned? Seeing that the black smoke was no longer visible, Yatsugawa Iom suppressed the shock in her heart and turned her gaze to the blonde beauty beside her, whose appearance and clothing clearly had a Western feel. Honestly, with the two of them standing together, one full of the gentleness of ancient East and the other full of modern Western charm, they could indeed be considered a pleasing scenery. And in a place they couldn't see, Lucci had already arrived near Mima Amatori. However, the first thing he noticed was not the latter, but the black afterimage that was rapidly causing slaughter among the hunter's soldiers. This scene greatly surprised him. Because the speed the opponent displayed was already very close to that of most of their Cypher Pol 9 agent members, and judging by the figure, it was clearly very petite. Lucci had originally thought that the only combat power worth noting in this world was the black smoke that had just appeared. What is that thing? However, when he discovered that that thing was rapidly approaching Mima Amatori's position while causing slaughter, he no longer thought about anything else and instantly disappeared from his original spot. Instant transmission. Chapter 173, 7th Update, The Terrifying New. Splish, splish, a dark afterimage flashed and vanished in the air. The necks of two black-clad soldiers were already cut open with large bloody wounds. After a few breaths, they fell to the ground with faces full of disbelief. However, when this figure, as fast as an arrow, approached about 10 meters from Mima Amatori, an even faster figure appeared beside it like lightning. In an instant, the former seemed to sense the latter, and a sharp black radiance swept across as if predicting. Bang, but its speed was still a little slow. With a dull collision sound, it flew back at an even faster speed, heavily smashing through the side wall of a distant house before disappearing. It was her? Lucci, with his back to Mima Amatori, recalled in surprise the face he had just seen in that instant. It was that mature-looking woman with golden hair and golden eyebrows. Speaking of which, her temperament was quite similar to Mata's, only the latter was more inclined towards charm. Who are you? Just then, a question sounded from behind him. Lucci turned his body sideways, turned his head, and looked coldly at Mima Amatori. World Government Special Investigator. I am your temporary guardian. Behave yourself and stay there. World Government? Mima Amatori repeated the term in confusion. He had never heard of such a tissue, and the reputation of this tissue sounded quite haughty. The government agency of the entire world. What about the shogunate over at Kondakaku? Boom, hey-oh just then, Mekko, who was kicked back by Lucci, as expected, sent the house debris covering her flying. The entire person stood in the burning gunfire flash and roared towards Lucci. At this moment, she had truly undergone a great change in appearance. Not only was her body covered with a layer of metallic sheened creature black armor, even that pretty face was half covered, and both arms had turned into huge black blades. At her chest, a bright blue light was blooming. Her blue-black pupils were full of madness and killing intent. She looked like she had completely turned into a Cobain. Swish, the next moment, she stomped and exploded the scorched earth beneath her feet with a bang. Her entire person transformed into a black shadow shimmering with points of blue light, rushing over with extremely astonishing explosive speed. TCH Lucci snorted coldly, thinking to himself. Finally, I've met a decent opponent. After slightly moving his body, his tendons and bones began to crackle. His entire body's muscles tensed up, his limbs and a large spine were like a fully drawn bow. The next second, like an arrow released from a bowstring, he also transformed into an incredibly fast afterimage and met her. As the current captain of Cypher Pol 9 agent, he had no reason to retreat. Duang, the hard index finger, with strength focused at one point, suddenly tapped on the black blade chopping down vertically. In the collision, the air seemed to explode, releasing a large amount of strong wind and air current, pushing away the dust around the two of them. Hey roar Meko, who had manifested as a Nu, felt the resistance on her hand. She roared madly towards Lucci, who was close at hand, and immediately launched chaotic attacks like a mad person. However, Lucci's combat experience was richer. Possessing reason, he dodged and weaved within a small area. No matter how fast and dense her mad slashes were, she simply couldn't touch even a corner of his clothes. Bang, casually dodging the black blade, in the blink of an eye, his right hand punched out, heavily smashing onto Meko's side face. This immediately caused her entire person to spin rapidly in midair and fly out. But such a heavy blow did not cause the Nu to lose mobility. She quickly flipped over in midair. After landing, her feet scraped the ground, releasing the force, finally stopping her body steadily. Only the black armor covering half her face had large cracks appear on it. Oh? Lucci raised an eyebrow in surprise. His slender index finger lightly pushed the dark red sunglasses on his nose bridge. He sneered. Decent defense. That punch just now was wrapped with armament hockey. I originally intended to knock her out with one punch and capture her alive. Since that's the case, then I'll throw a few more punches. He had already seen the huge value in this Meko. If she could be captured and brought back to the Stargate base on Ojika Peninsula, presumably the Biochemical Research Institute over there would be very happy. Thinking of this, Lucci decided to finish the combat quickly. But just at this moment, his observation hockey noticed Mima Amatori behind him was about to run. After all, Mima Amatori wasn't a fool either. The exchange between Lucci and Meko just now clearly exceeded the scope of his understanding. The former even threatened to capture him, while the latter had already lost reason, and there was even less hope that she would let him go. Since that's the case, if he didn't leave while both sides were engaged in combat, when else would he? This bastard. Lucci gnashed his teeth in anger. But that Meko simply didn't give him a chance to disengage from combat. Her figure pounced over like a flash of lightning, and this time, wisps of purplish blue mist actually emerged from her body. Swish, the thick black blade chopped down towards his head, immediately tearing through the air and emitting a piercing roar. What? Lucci's face changed drastically. This slash actually brought him a sense of crisis. He quickly stomped hard on the ground beneath his feet. Boom, the next moment, the dark curved blade swept downwards from above his head. The instant it touched the ground, it exploded like a cannonball, and the entire area within 10 meters exploded. What's the situation? Her strength. At the critical moment, Lucci, who used instant transmission to pull away about 20 meters, looked at the place where he had stood just a second ago, which was enveloped in thick rolling smoke. A clear look of surprise appeared on his face. As for what Meko had just slashed, it was just an afterimage of him. Hey Aurora, but this wasn't over yet. Although his vision was blocked by the smoke, observation hockey could clearly sense Meko's strange movements inside. She lay on the ground on all limbs like a wild beast, opening her mouth and raising her head towards his direction. A strong mental fluctuation spread out around her. Immediately after, a spherical mental energy mass emitting dense extreme negative emotions condensed at the edge of her mouth. What is that thing? The moment this thing appeared in his mind, Lucci's face suddenly changed drastically, and he no longer had his previous composure and calmness. Boom, just as he was trying to repeat his trick and use instant transmission to leave the spot, Meko's side had already sprayed out the energy mass. In an instant, the surging air current completely tore apart the surrounding thick smoke, revealing the true appearance of this thing. This was a purplish blue ball that looked completely composed of energy. And the moment it left the front of its master's mouth, it immediately expanded more than 10 times, completely transforming into a surging column of radiance, submerging Lucci's body. This wasn't the most terrifying thing. It actually completely blew up, destroyed, and pulverized all the buildings in a straight line in front of Meko, penetrating through the entire Hidden Stones Village station. But it appeared quickly and dispersed quickly. As the energy was completely discharged, a new earth dent appeared in front of Meko, about 10 meters wide and half a meter deep, whose length was completely out of sight. Not far away, Mima Amatori, who hadn't run far yet, heard this huge commotion. After turning around and glancing, he was instantly stunned. His pupils were trembling violently. This was done by Meko? He who had always believed that only experts were fit to live, and the weak deserved to die, at this moment, for the first time, produced a feeling that he himself had become weak. What a pity, the price of this strength is self-awareness. Shaking his head, Mima Amatori was about to set off and leave again. He wanted to rush back to Katetsugio and head to Kongakaku, that was the target he wanted to destroy. But just at the moment he turned his head, someone patted him on the shoulder. You are Mima Amatori, right? Where are you going? Chapter 174 8th Update, Cypher Pull arriving successively. Who are you people? Mima Amatori's heart sank as he looked at the man in black who had appeared beside him without him noticing. Not far away, 5 other men in black were escorting a man in white coats towards them. He was very familiar with the demeanor, it was the same as the researchers from Dr. Shawai's group who had studied Kabane for him. Elder brother. At this moment, Mumai seemed to snap out of her confusion, or perhaps, she was startled awake by Meko's earlier Kabane version of a small tail beast bomb. Although she realized that Mima Amatori had been deceiving her all along, years of accumulated admiration still made her unable to hate him. Seeing him restrained by strange people now, she subconsciously ran over quickly, holding the steam gun with a bayonet in her hand, vigilantly watching this group of men in black, all around 2 meters tall. Let go of elder brother, or don't blame me for being impolite. Hey, don't be in a hurry, little girl. At this moment, the middle-aged man in white coats walked over and laughed cheerfully. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ron. I am a high-ranking researcher from the Biochemical Research Institute directly affiliated with the World Government Academy of Sciences. And they are agents of the World Government Cypher Pull. We actually have no malice towards you, as long as the two of you cooperate obediently. Meanwhile, the man in black released his hand from Mima Amatori's shoulder. But even so, the latter didn't dare to act rashly. He had witnessed Lucci's combat performance with his own eyes earlier. He couldn't help but suspect that the strength of these men in black was also similar. If that were the case, his reckless actions would only be throwing away his life for nothing. However, the little girl Mumai was a bit reckless. She was used to relying on her Kabanarai's superhuman physique and combat skills, always subduing the opponent first, no matter who she encountered or what situation she faced. The red-clothed girl leaped into the air, then performed an agile somersault, pouncing towards the white-clothed person who called himself Ron. Because she didn't want to kill, she didn't think about shooting either. Instead, she prepared to control the other party and take him as a hostage. Stop. Mumai. Mima Amatori's expression changed, and with a slightly anxious tone, he shouted to stop her, but it was already too late. Oh, quite energetic, this little girl a Cypher Pull agent member following group leader Ron chuckled. This was also a way of reminding the others to just leave it to him to handle. He immediately made a move, flicking away the bayonet Mumai swung over with his finger. Then, with a speed that the latter couldn't handle at all, he delivered a light palm blade strike to the back of the girl's neck. With a muffled bang, the red-clothed girl immediately fell unconscious. She was then held by the black-clothed person who had made the move, preventing her from falling onto the dusty ground. Sleep for a while first. Now is not the time for you to make a fuss. Although a Kabanarai's strength is difficult to contend with compared to ordinary people, for these Cypher Pull agent members who are specifically responsible for protecting high-ranking official, it was far from enough to be considered. This scene also made Mima Amatori no longer hold any illusions of resisting or escaping. He was also a Kabanarai, but if talking about combat strength, he really might not be much higher than Mumai. This made him start thinking about what exactly the world government was. Could such a strong organization really exist? Why hadn't he heard of it before? Oh, that blue glowing heart, is it the native blue heart Kabane of this world? Its destructive power looks terrifying. I wonder how it compares to Steve Gus. Group leader Ron ignored them, took 2 steps forward, and looked into the distance at Meko, who had transformed into a new. Meanwhile, Lucci, standing in the dent where a layer of ground had been scraped off, frowned as he looked at the man in black blocking in front of him. Just now, when he didn't have time to dodge and had to try to protect himself with iron body and armament hockey, this person instantly appeared in front of him and blocked most of the energy bombardment for him. Who are you? Lucci could naturally tell that this person was most likely his colleagues, but the key was the black armor covering this person's face, the blue light at the heart on his chest, and the purplish blue mist erupting from his body when blocking the bombardment. They were exactly the same as that thing opposite. Steve Gus, former Cypher Pull 8 agent, now Cypher Pull 9 agent. He became the first Cobain warrior in the Biochemical Research Institute's experiments. Please guide me, Captain Rasky. So that's what it is. Lucci suddenly understood in his heart, then said unhappily. Did you come here to show off your strength to me? Although the attack just now looked impressive in momentum, with his armament hockey and iron body level, there wouldn't be much problem taking it. At most, his clothing might get a bit messy. But now, this newly joined member had actually saved him. This was quite frustrating. No, I'm just following Group Leader Ron's instructions to test the differences between myself and this native Cobain warrior. Please let me have this opponent, Captain. I beg you. Steve Gus behaved very low-key, giving Lucci ample respect, which made the latter's expression look a bit better. Got it. After speaking, Lucci vanished from the spot and quickly left towards the position where Group Leader Ron and the others were. This made the former reveal a relieved expression. However, Meko, who had transformed into a new, was not interested in him. Instead, it stared at Lucci's figure and rushed over. Seeing this, Steve Gus let out a cold snort, also turning into afterimages of scattered blue light, and intercepted it in the blink of an eye. Bang! The latter grabbed the huge black blade that was chopping over with a palm covered with a layer of black biological armor, allowing the two to rub against each other in his palm, creating sparks. Steve Gus grinned, looking at Meko in front of him, who was letting out unknown roars from its mouth, and laughed. Still a great beauty, my kind. At this moment, the blue light at the heart of the two standing in opposition illuminated each other in midair. However, one had fallen into madness, while the other's gaze was clear. HRRGH. With a roar full of killing intent and brutality, like the drumbeat announcing the start of combat, the two Cobain warriors, who had transformed into new, both erupted with powerful aura, emitting a large amount of purplish-blue mental energy from their bodies. The blade and gauntlet on their hands, condensed from viscous black silk, fiercely collided again, emitting a series of deafening sounds of metal and stone clashing. The surrounding ground violently trembled and cracked in the sudden high-speed intense battle between the two. The air was beaten into violent ripples like water, scattering in all directions. Two black figures, both carrying faint blue light, constantly crossed paths on the battlefield within a 100-meter radius. Every collision would erupt with surging purplish-blue energy waves. The mental energy they're using is a bit like hockey, but compared to hockey, it gives a feeling of being more violent, and it carries obvious mental impact. Lucci, who had returned to Group Leader Ron's side, frowned as he watched their fierce battle, secretly pondering. At this moment, another four men in black turned into afterimages and appeared around them. This made Mima Amatori increasingly desperate and helpless. He felt that except for the researcher named Ron, he couldn't beat any of the men in black. Where did this world government organization come from? Captain. It turned out to be members from other Cypher Pol 9 agent teams who had arrived. Lucci frowned and asked coldly. What about the other two teams? Don't tell me they haven't arrived yet. Chapter 175, 9th Update, The Arriving Army Unit Train. No, they've already arrived too. We met up with Mata first, then they stayed there to guard the Katetsugio and those key targets, while we came over to find you. A male Cypher Pol 9 agent member quickly explained. Okay, that's good then. Captain Rasky nodded casually, continuing to watch the fierce battle in the distance, but it was clear that Steve Gus was completely overwhelming the opponent. Although both sides were new transformed Cobain warriors, there was still an insurmountable gap in their basic strength. Steve Gus himself was a genuine C-star person, his innate physique was much stronger than the people of this world, and he was proficient in Marine 6-style spotty techniques, having also awakened observation hockey. This battle had no suspense from the start. It was just so that Group Leader Ron could observe as many details as possible that he restrained his strength and entered a stalemate with Meko. Even so, the scale of the combat was quite exaggerated. Especially the spherical energy bullets occasionally fired from the latter's mouth, it was practically demolishing Hidden Stone's Villigto station. Even the governor's mansion not far away had been reduced to a large area of ruins. Oh right, we found hundreds of Cobain locked in cages in the front car of the Katetsugio, and a heart glowing with blue light that was nourished by their blood. What, really? Group Leader Ron looked at the Cypher Pol 9 agent member who spoke in surprise upon hearing this. Following that, Lucci smiled and said. Not only that, but Dr. Shawai, who specializes in researching the Cobain virus, is also with Mata. You two should have plenty to talk about. That's great. Let's go, quickly go meet Dr. Shawai. Group Leader Ron said impatiently. What about Steve Gus over there? Aren't you going to watch anymore? Have him capture the person. After bringing her back to Shishikari base, maybe Vice Admiral Tsuru can restore her consciousness when she arrives. Tell him to be careful with his force and not injure the person.